Thanks a lot, and you're welcome.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nganga. Indeed, our society is committed not just to give care, but to ensure that the care that we give is safe, is of quality, and is accessible. And that is why we are here, to improve on how we can better do this. And thank you again, Crown and Mindre, for partnering with us. Next, I'm going to invite Mr. Tim Shen. I hope I pronounce it the right way. Mr. Tim is the sales manager for Mindre. He's going to come up front and tell us something. Karibu sana, Bwana Tim.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I want to take this opportunity to introduce myself officially. My name is Tim Shen. Yes, your pronunciation is correct. Thank you very much, Doctor. From Mindre. So this is my 6 years in Mindre. Before I'm working in West Africa. Now, since last year, I transferred to East Africa. So I will take around 10 minutes to 15 minutes to introduce about Mindre. When we are talking about Mindre, actually, I will summarize. Mr. Rogers, can you help me for pointers? Thank you. Sorry. So I'll give my speech as 3 parts. One is who is Mindre, and then how and why we make the difference, and then to introduction of our globalization and localization. So I will summarize Mindre with the slogan "Healthcare within reach." Actually, Mindre, as a complete medical devices solutions provider, we are focusing on shared mode healthcare technology to bring and to more people. So I just want to highlight some key figures. At the moment now, Mindre has 11,000 employees from more than 30 countries, and we have 39 international subsidiaries around the world. Last year, in 2020, the sales revenue of Mindre is $3 billion. So as a complete solution provider, Mindre provides the solution covered for the whole hospital, from emergency with care room, and critical care, of course, theater solution. So especially to the product line segment, we have 3 main product line segments. Number 1 is patient monitoring and life support. That is the one I'm in charge. Number 2 is in vitro diagnostic. Number 3 is medical imaging systems. So specified to PMLS, that is what we are calling patient monitoring and life support. We can find the patient monitor and the system machine, ventilator, of course, the operating table, and also the operating light. So I just want to give some key numbers because Mindre, as we know, is started from 1991. With 30 years development, Mindre's patient monitor is already have a global number 3 market share, and in China we are of course number 1. For the anesthesia machine, globally now we are number 3 market share, and of course in China we are also number 1. For defibrillator, ventilator, and infusion pumps, we also have very big market share in China and also around the world. So to summarize, for patient monitoring and life support, we can provide the solution for emergency care and transport, private operative care, and also critical care, as well as subacute care solutions. So here you can find some of our machines on site. Start from 1991, Mindre start 30 years for development. So Mindray started its first patient monitor in 1998. So until now, when I go to visit some of the hospitals in the countryside, I can still find this PM9000 patient monitor. So one of the stories that I go to one of the hospitals in Nigeria, that's in West Africa, I see the patient monitor is even older than my age working in Mindray. So Mindray is coming from Shenzhen. Now it's the third biggest city in China, where currently this city is the Silicon Valley of China. So in this city, you can find most of the innovative and high-tech company. We can find, for example, Huawei, DJI, and Tencent. So as I mentioned, Mindray has 30 years history. So I want to find out how and why to make this difference in 30 years to become a tier 1 medical services players. Number one is R&D, of course. So every year, Mindray will invest more than 10% of the sales revenue in our R&D department. So just remember there's a figure, our total employee now is 11,000, but in R&D only, it's more than 3,200. So it's more than 30% person is working in R&D. So every year, we can launch from 7 to 12 new products. For the manufacturing, actually, now Mindray have the biggest manufacturing center in Asian Pacific area, has capacity of 300,000 square meters. And it contains 300 products in this factory center. So now we have 2 factory centers, which is in Shenzhen and also in Nanjing. So for precise manufacturing and intelligence manufacturing, Mindray's product line has 6,200 intelligent tools to guarantee the precise manufacturing. And also, we also have a real-time manufacturing system to monitoring the production. For service, I just want to give a general number. Now, we have serving centers in 28 countries and have more than 100 customer sites on site. Especially to Kenya, now we will open our service and training center in Chakro RTM office. This will be official launch in around October. So about globalization and localization. So as I mentioned, Mindray is an international company. I just want to give an idea. For example, in Africa now we have 5 subsidiaries, including Kenya, which is in Egypt, Morocco, Nigeria, South Africa, of course, including Kenya. So Kenya will be our training and service center for East Africa. In US, Mindray is serving top 20 hospitals, and 9 of 10 cardiac hospitals is using Mindray solutions. In Europe, we are searching more than 400 teaching hospitals. So here I want to give an example, Royal Perth Hospital in UK, one of the lead heart and lung hospital. This hospital actually is installed more than 400 Benevision N-series patient monitor, which you can see from here, and also our SV800 ventilators. Another reference hospital from UK is UK Sunderland. Actually, when we're designing the Benevision patient monitor, we have a deep cooperation with this hospital to listen to the clients for the design. So actually, before the COVID, Mindray actually want to be not only as a manufacturer provider, and also want to be a bridge for the international academic, for the users. For example, every year we'll go to many international exhibitions and also the professional medical academic forum. Last year, there's a COVID time. I just want to give an example because after China, let's say, the Europe is the second wave of the COVID risk. Last year in Italy, Mindray's support more than 5,000 patient monitors and more than 1,500 ventilators to support Italy to fight COVID. So last year, for COVID in China, Mindray donated more than $4.6 million devices in Wuhan. I think this city is famous for everyone. And apart from that, we also want to share the experience and also knowledge from China or other countries with the different doctors. Only last year, we organized more than 200 online webinars with different hospitals. So I want to take this chance to introduce our new app, which is called My Academy. Actually, this app is just launched last month. So with this month, if you are a Mindray user, then you can check, number one, you can do registration. After registration, you can find the information in this app. Actually, it's very easy. I want to show in the phone. You download My Academy, and then after registration, what is the condition of the registration? If you are a Mindray user, for example, if you're using Mindray ventilator, then you can put your serious number. And if you are not the Mindray users, you can register as a general client. Let's say if you put the Mindray serious number, here you can find so many information. For example, the article, the live, and the news, especially the use of the ventilators. And some of the articles will introduce how our ventilator to help or to fight for the COVID solutions. So by the end, I want to give a vision of Mindray, better healthcare for all. So also I want to appreciate all the clients. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tim, for that. And that comes, we therefore come to the end of the first part, which was mainly introductions. We've introduced those who are partnering in this event, that is Kenya Society of Anesthesiologists, Crown Healthcare, and Mindray. And now we are going to move to the next part, and that is going to be the clinical presentations. So everything is moving a notch higher. And to start us off, and I'll ask you to be very attentive to his presentation, is going to be Dr. Lee Ngugi. Dr. Lee is a consultant anesthetist, anesthesiologist, and also a lecturer at Kenyatta University School of Medicine. Karibu sana, Daktari.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much, Chair, for the kind introduction. So I see my seniors here, and it's always a privilege to be able to speak where they are, because they have brought us this far. So I was given this topic to discuss called Emerging Technologies in General Anesthesia. In terms of conflict, I have nothing to declare. Why did I come here to speak about this? As an anesthesiologist, we do get involved in patients. We always want things to go right. We want quality to go right. But we know sometimes things don't go right all the time. And because of that, we sit in committees where we're told, come up with particular specifications for equipment so that we can ensure that every patient we interact with, everything goes right. So I'm here to just bring up these factors that we need to be looking out at the end of the day so that our patients are and get a good journey and are safe. So my agenda today is just looking about 4 particular areas that I think eventually will lead us to focus more on realizing that technology can actually make a big difference for us in anesthesia, and of course, eventually to our patients. So I'll stick to these 4 areas. In the field of medicine, just like we've seen in aviation, there are people who are called champions of safety. When it comes to healthcare, I don't think there's any profession in healthcare bigger than anesthesia when it comes to matters safety. So we are the superheroes, so to say, both ladies and gentlemen. And we fight for our patients every day to ensure that they are safe and as safe as can be. Let's take a step back and look at this area. Is it always rosy for our patients? We know that we do get this anesthesia-related mortality and morbidity. All we know is that since the advent of modern surgery and anesthesia is that the rate there's been a clear reduction in anesthesia-related and peri-op mortality. But this rate has not been commensurate. It's varied a bit. We find that in the high-income countries, the decline has been significantly better than low-income countries. So I'll probably just ask someone in the audience, and possibly my chair, why do you think this is so? How comes in the high-income countries we're having this good reduction compared to what we are seeing in low-income? Maybe just one sentence. Sorry to put you on the spot. So as he sets up his mic, but I'm sure you can speak up and...
Okay, you can all hear me. This question coming from Dr. Lee, I am a bit cautious. We're probably heading the direction of an RCT. I'm not so sure. But I would think probably the reason is, having spoken with some of our colleagues in the West, is they do more audits, clinical audits, to identify the gaps and intervene on those gaps by development of protocol of clinical care, including advances in equipment and monitoring and feedback systems. That's my thought, Lee. I could be wrong. You'll correct us in a short while.
I think, thank you for, that's an excellent response. And I think he actually hit the nail on the head. The unfortunate thing is studies are not so clear on why exactly. They can't pinpoint why exactly some do better, but from the summary I got is that it's about investment. High-income countries are taking time to invest in technologies, in techniques, and in a training necessary to ensure that patients are safer. So if we also want to get to that point where patients are getting the best care in the world, we must invest. Going forward, how do we see anesthesia as it relates to ongoing surgical care in the world, or specifically to Kenya? We are seeing that we are going to have an increased demand. So anesthesiologists sitting wherever you are will be called upon to make decisions on equipment, techniques, what has to happen in your hospital. It's because we're having a lot of increased demand in anesthesia, or what we call non-operative room anesthesia. We see it in the radiology suites, lots of intervention techniques required. We see it with cath labs. Now I think Nairobi has almost 10 cath labs. We see it in suits in the GI suits. We're also getting, if you look at the lifespan in Kenya, the last 20 years, it's been increasing. So we're having older patients than before. We know older age is related to comorbids, and they're also requiring surgeries. Almost every day there's a 92-year-old, 94, 96, going to operating room. Again, our patients are also getting sicker with the non-communicable diseases, getting lots of patients hypertension, sleep apnea, and now COVID is another one. So all these things are driving increased demand for anesthesia. We're also having the surgical colleagues coming up with new innovative techniques, where before maybe some patients could not get surgery, now they become candidates. We have robotics, which requires to act in a particular way from the traditional way. So all these things compared, every day you read in the newspaper, there's a poor outcome in this and that. So we're also being driven by industry, regulators, to look at the issue of safety. All these things are driving increased demand in anesthesia. So when you just look overall at the use of technology in healthcare, if you go to any hospital today, I bet that there is some aspect of technology around you, be it a device, be it a process. So technology has become integral to healthcare. So what has changed? What is driving tech in healthcare? And this is just general healthcare, not but specifically in any particular area, is that, one, we get unsolved needs. Every day, there's an issue of quality. Quality needs data. We want to improve safety. We also, not all techniques are working very well. So all these unsolved needs are driving the need for technology in healthcare. Again, where before we didn't have particular tools, now certain tools are easily available. We have automation or techniques for automating or making processes automatic. We have robotics. We have AI, artificial intelligence, machine learning. All these things being coupled to healthcare are changing what we are able to do for our patients every day. Again, we have economic pressure. You think, if you read worldwide news, you'll think the US is where they're amongst the poorest, because for them, cost has become a big, big concern. Again, it also cascades down to us that the economic pressures are forcing us to rethink use of technology to change how the traditional delivery of healthcare has changed. Again, efficiency. We want cost savings. We want time savings. We want all these savings are coming again to drive the need for technology in healthcare. Data is the new oil. Middle East, they're known for making money through oil. Data is the new oil. Again, this you can't collect the large amounts of data you need if you don't have technology. So put together, these are what are enabling technology to be employed in large scale in healthcare. So specifically when we move to anesthesia, it's arguable, but I don't think there's a profession that has been affected like anesthesia in terms of technology. Without technology, there would be no anesthetist today. The bottom picture you see is what is called the inhaler. It's the first inhaler designed that delivered the first anesthetic in 1846. So without technology, we've never had this profession. We also have what is called a pulse oximeter. This has changed the safety of anesthesia worldwide. So you can see the contribution of safety to our profession. By having anesthesia machines, we've been able to scale, go to any part of the country, go to Africa, we've been to DRC and other places. The fact that there's an anesthesia machine has brought scale to this particular profession, and also efficiency. Because if you compare what was the earlier inhalers could consume in terms of gas, it's too much compared to what we have now. So, particularly to anesthesia, I want to hope to inspire you to look at these three critical areas that I think are shaping the practice of general anesthesia. We have many branches. We have critical care. We have regional anesthesia, but I'll particularly focus on general anesthesia. That integration, automation, or what we call automatic control of anesthesia and clinical decision support systems are actually shaping not just the future, but the present. So looking back, how far have we come? If you look at what we had 1846, it was just a glass inhaler designed by Morton himself. And through the ages, from 1920, we got a Boyle's machine, which in this picture depicted in 1950 with the addition of a ventilator, which gave more possibilities, more functionalities. And then with the advent of computer system, or what you call microprocessors, we're able to get these huge machines that combine many other functions into one. So with integration, it's really moved our profession to the next level. And of course, anything that improves our profession eventually improves patient care. So what we find is that the conventional anesthesia machine has evolved to what we are calling nowadays a workstation. And what really it means that it's been designed to be a complete anesthesia and respiratory gas delivery and management system. In the older era, you'd have different components you buy separately. But right now, we're having this integration. And it serves us in many ways. That what has enabled this integration is that now we have advanced software. Look at new machines. You're hardly having any mechanical knobs to push around. You don't have to crank up things because we have software, we have tech tools. And where they're affecting us that, or where they're improving our capabilities, that now we are getting to be able to give better ventilation, better monitoring. If you look at the delivery of our inhaled gases, it's drastically improved. We have cost savings through low-flow anesthesia. We have automatic control. Imagine you can possibly do automatic anesthesia. You know, it was unimaginable a while ago. We have now proper data that we can record from our systems, print out. And now with connectivity to the hospital information management system, you can easily get, it gets safer because you can get all the information from radiology, from lab, all in one particular station. What other capabilities have been integrated into these workstations? That now we have what we call full automatic systems. These are available. I'll speak a bit on that. We have automatic machine tests. Look at, a lot of studies have shown that the machine check by anesthesiologists is not always done perfectly, exposing patients to poor outcomes, some even up to death. So that process in many machines now is automatic. These machines are able to detect faults. They can keep a log. I know in one hospital we kept saying, can someone come and repair this machine? And they're like, it was repaired yesterday. And then you ask, where are the logs? So I want to know what is actually this that is being repaired. Now machines can tell you what fault, what repair, how many times it's gone down this month, and all that is automated. We also have advanced monitoring. Before you could buy your anesthesia machine on the side and buy a monitor on the side. Right now, all that is integrated. And we're able to have perfect hemodynamic monitoring, new things including depth of anesthesia monitoring. Before you could buy your depth of anesthesia monitor separate, and that's why you're finding some hospitals giving very, very different care, because it means one hospital that doesn't buy that on the side, they're giving a lower quality. But now, having all this integrated into one, we are saying that we can move the standard of anesthesia care a notch higher. Other things that, if you see the kind of ventilation, newer equipment is coming around, or what is in literature, we are actually giving ICU level. We know ICU level ventilation is tuned perfectly to the lungs of that particular patient. So just again in anesthesia, we're able to give anesthesia using lung protective ventilation. We know that that has a bearing on some of the post-op complications that we see. Now we're getting anesthesia, or in the OR, we're getting recruitment modes, adaptive ventilation, without going into too much detail. And we can even do very precise tidal volumes. Before, we could find machines cannot be used on neonates, cannot be used on preterms, because the kind of precision that is required was lacking. But right now, these are things which are available to, in a lot of modern machines. And again, connectivity. So at next time we sit somewhere, we are asked, can we help this hospital provide the best care? These are some of the things we'll be looking at when we're looking at the quotations for the machines. Again, I'm very excited to see that some machines in the world have brought in what is called, they've integrated also a high-flow nasal cannula system. This has been a big deal in anesthesia. It can give us oxygenation, or what we call apnea time, of up to 30 minutes in adults. That is crazy, because a lot of adverse events occur during the process of induction and intubation. This has been shown to bring a lot of change in our profession. So I think by integrating this into an anesthesia machine, it becomes, it's just out of this world. So, and before, to get this, you buy it on the side and not integrate in a machine. So these are possibilities that have come in the world. Again, just quickly, just referencing the high-flow nasal cannula, is that the possibilities by integrating it to an anesthesia machine brings excellent care for obese patients, pediatric patients, and the obstetric age group, in population, high-risk patients who come from critical care. Again, if you enable us to do what we call tubeless anesthesia, some of this procedural sedation, we know that one of the problems with procedural sedation is hypoxia. People get hypoxic all the time, but with integration of this becomes a game changer when it comes to anesthesia. So integration is a big deal. If we didn't have integration from when things started in 1846, we would not be here. Patients would be having the worst outcomes. So integration has been a key factor and something for us to look out for whenever we're going to assess anesthetic machines for our workplace. So integration delivers the ability to deal with fewer devices. So you're not one way looking at this device and then turning your neck to look at another device and then looking at another device under the table to check what's going on. All this is integrated, and you have seamless integration of data from all these various monitoring devices that are found within the workstation. And again, it's been shown that anesthetists, on average, take about 1 to 2 seconds to just glance on the screen every so often. So if you have all these integrated on the screen, it means that anesthesia has the ability to integrate all these monitors come into play from one particular display. So going forward, it would be a good idea, instead of buying things separately, get them from an integrated machine. And because of that, it gives us more time to actually do our work, which is look at the patient. Our work is not too much to look at the equipment or fill in forms. It's actually to ensure that the patient is safe. So quickly, I'll just look at particular things that have come in the last decade or so. Actually, from the 1970s, there have been attempts to try and automate the practice of anesthesia. As I said, in other countries, they're having decline in mortalities. But for us, it's there, but it's not as fast as we'd like. So there's been a drive to see, is there a way we can automate this, just like we've automated many other things in life? And the key things that are driving automation in terms of delivery of anesthesia is that we have short-acting medication. Short-acting medication means you can do more precise adjustments. That's one. And number two is that now we have technology, which before in the 1970s did not exist to enable us to automate. And the other thing is that we have reliable targets, because if you're going to automate, you need a reliable target that approximates to what you want to measure. In this case, when we're using inhalational gas, it would be end-tidal agent concentration. If we are using depth of anesthesia monitoring, we have all these EEG-based modalities, including BIS and entropy. For the intravenous anesthesia, again, we have targets, what we call the concentration effect site. So these have enabled that actually, for what we've been looked for a long time, we can actually automate the delivery or control of anesthesia. Because this is actually what happens in theater. For my colleagues, we keep laughing the way we have to keep adjusting the dial. Because what happens is that you set a particular delivery, say for sevoflurane, you want to deliver 2% on the patient. You set a bit higher because there's uptake in the patient, and then you keep adjusting to get it right. So these adjustments, now there's technology to enable machines to actually do this for us. So what happens is that they adjust fresh gas, they also can adjust the vaporizer, and this is because we have electronic vaporizers nowadays. A long time ago, or let me say the traditional machines have a manual vaporizer that you must crank 1%, 2%, 3%. But now we're having electronic vaporizers. Once something is electronic, it means you have ability to actually get it to be automated. So it adjusts fresh gas vaporizer output using the set targets that you have set. And this has been, will be a game changer when it comes to delivery. The advantage is that you get more stable anesthetics, you have more stable oxygenation. We know hypoxia is a bad one for us. Again, we're able to reduce agent consumption. Low flow has been the rage over the last decade. But there are difficulties achieving that. But with automatic control, those are possibilities. And because of that, the delivery of anesthesia will be very cheap, or let me say more cost effective, and less adjustments for the anesthetist to focus on the work ahead of him. Just want to quote this particular paper that looked at how what we call decision support systems can help us be able to overcome some of the challenges we get, and actually so that there are many parameters we work with in theater that machines can able to interpret correctly, work with us, and give patients a safer anesthetic, more higher quality, and actually at a more cost-effective. So this particular paper looked at, they had created something called Alert Watch, which looked at about 40 parameters that anesthetists grapple with on a patient, especially patients' comorbids. You always think about the age of the patient. You're thinking about the weight. You're thinking about the BMI. You're thinking of what comorbids they have. You're thinking of what were the preoperative tests. Maybe they had a low HB. Maybe they had a high potassium. You're thinking of what you are seeing at that particular point. You're looking at the blood pressure, looking at the temperature. You look at the fluids you're giving. You're looking at sugar control. All these things have been found to, we're actually concentrating on about up to 40 parameters. It's difficult. If I give you 40 things to concentrate on any person, chance of overload is high. But they found that with introduction of some of these automated techniques, and you've set targets on it, it can display and make you focus on important things. So with this Alert Watch, they found that it's been able to reduce hypotension time. It's been able to get a better management of IV fluids. We know excess IV fluids leads to patients going to ICU and the likes, or less, sometimes putting them at risk for renal failure. It's been shown that lung ventilation gets better. The times where we are over-ventilating reduce significantly. And all these things have potential to impact outcome. So management of these interventions in this hyperacute intraoperative setting requires a single anesthesiologist to just look at all these things, and that is crazy, but that's what we have to deal with. So comes in what we call clinical decision support system. I know it's a long definition, but I'll just repeat and say it's computer-based programs that analyze data. Once they analyze that data, they're able to give prompts and reminders to assist healthcare providers to implement evidence-based clinical guidelines. I took this definition from the CDC website. So when it comes to general anesthesia, where do we see the potential? Actually, some of these are already in the market, is that we're able to improve what we call intraoperative monitoring. We're able to support low-flow anesthesia. We're also able to avoid awareness. Lots of studies that look at poor outcomes in anesthesia are actually geared to see that our monitoring sometimes is not up to the standard. We know with waste, low-flow anesthesia, and again, awareness is one of those side effects. If a patient gets, you really want to curse yourself because some of them, they get messed up for life. So just looking at a few aspects of clinical decision support system, let's just look at low flow. There's this paper published 2018. It's about one of the major hospitals in New York. We know they're quite advanced. They get trainings, as we said, but even with that, they still found that about, on average, anesthesia providers are overusing the gases. They're still giving more than 30% greater than is necessary. Okay? And what this means is that you have increased costs. Inhalational agents are not cheap. So if you're giving more than necessary, we're wasting. Remember, we're a poor country. We're the ones who actually need the savings more than maybe a high-income country would need. So for us, it's imperative that we look at that. We know that these halogenated compounds are associated with greenhouse, it's a greenhouse gas, and there's a drive to look at climate change. Anesthesia is being focused. There's a spotlight on anesthesia to play their part on climate change. Again, low flow enables better temperature management, humidifying the gases, so there's also a patient reason to do low flow. And of course, contamination. Many countries are looking at the kind of contamination you get in the workplace. So hospitals that care about, they take the health of their providers seriously. They don't want you to get exposed to things which have a potential to be poisonous in any particular aspect. So low flow provides a good opportunity to limit anesthesia medications while delivering excellent care. So what exists in terms of clinical decision support systems today? I've just put up one that exists in the market, that it's able to tell you the gases you are delivering to the patients, how do they compare to the target? Are you wasting? Are you giving an optimum amount, or are you giving an amount that is lower than usual? And this is real time. It doesn't wait 10 minutes to change. It tells you as you proceed with the anesthetic. So we are having clinical decision support system coming in now to be able to enable anesthetists to be able to provide low-flow anesthesia with all the benefits we had already indicated. Again, when it comes to clinical decision support, some people went out and looked at many other parameters that we see in patients all the time, and they found something like in 38 out of 39 parameters, they found a machine can be taught, machine learning, we have AI now, to be able to predict and therefore give prompts in outcomes. So in anesthesia, again, perfectly suited to work with these clinical decision support systems. And one of the things which, again, is hot in the market is about prediction. Sometimes, at least for the anesthesia, when working in theater, you may change the dial just to regulate how much medication you're giving, but you don't know the effect. How does it change? We know that patients metabolize some of these agents. Therefore, what you're giving might not be sufficient, or could be sufficient at the start, but as the anesthetic moves on, it becomes an excess dose and vice versa. So prediction, again, using these clinical decision support systems, have been able to give us a visual, you get a visual forecast, okay, of the course of the anesthetic, so that you can see how your gases, your oxygen concentrations will vary over 20 minutes. So the next 20 minutes, the change you've done now, how will it look like over 20 minutes? It also shows you how it's been the last 10 minutes. Again, giving you the ability to tailor-make your anesthetic for the particular patient you have in front of you. Other new things we are finding, again, in the market is that we have things called MSC calculators for anesthetists. This is actually the dose that keeps a patient asleep. It changes. It's not the same in every patient. It's different in children. It's different in the elderly. It's different with halothane. It's different with isoflurane and all these gases. So sometimes we need these calculators to be able to tailor-make our or optimize our drug delivery. So with that, I just conclude to say that when it's your turn to decide what anesthesia machine you want for your hospital, go for the best in safety, look at the most efficient, look at the most versatile because they're there now. Again, select on best functionality, and do not forget the one which you can connect to a HMIS. And I leave you with this quote that the best way to predict the future is to try and create it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ngugi, for taking us from 1846 to 2021 and everything in between, and giving us a glimpse, or indeed a suggestion of where we need to move to in terms of offering the best, not only to our patients in terms of safety, but we are thinking about cost to our hospitals. We are thinking about the environment in terms of global warming. We have a role in all this, and many other things. You almost made it sound like in a couple of years, they might even integrate an anesthesiologist into the system, and we become irrelevant. I hope that will not happen. I'm going to take this chance now to invite our next speaker. That is Mr. Mustafa Albarodi. Albarodi is a clinical application specialist for Mindre, and is going to talk to us about anesthesia product line updates. Mr. Mustafa, karibu.
Good morning, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here. I'm Mustafa Baroudi, clinical application specialist from Mindray, Egypt. Actually, it's my first time to be here in Kenya. And I feel so pleasure to be here. I found a very welcoming and hospitality in this city, and of course from the people here. I'm feeling I'm home. In the same way of treating in Egypt, and the culture are almost the same. So I will talk today about our grand launching for our super high-end anesthesia machine, the A9. And mostly this presentation will be applying what we have learned from Dr. Lee presentations. So I'm welcoming all the honored attendees to hear this presentation. Okay. So mainly we will talk about the A9 anesthesia machine. We will be focusing on three main pillars. And our main slogan for the machine is all around safety. We are looking for safety for the patient. We are looking for safety for the users, clinical users, and even the safety of our own machine. So to have more focus on these three pillars, to have the enhanced patient safety, better user experience, and green operating room. For our first pillar, the enhanced preoperative patient safety. One of our most important features that we have, and we have learned from Dr. Lee's presentation, the high-flow nasal cannula. And we are proud that we are the only brand that providing this kind of features in our anesthesia machine. Using our electronic mixer inside the machine and to make the precise control for up to 100 liters per minute for pure oxygenation. And for our design, that is a built-in design on the machine, no more extra connectivity or extra attachment for making more confusing for the user. And even for emergency purposes, that we can use it in a separate way. We don't have to turn on the machine and waiting for the power on. We can only go directly to this feature and power it on and go to the emergency purposes, maybe for induction or some fast operations. Secondly, and the most important, is automatic controlled anesthesia. As we learned from the last presentation, that is the most important, how to make a more cost-effective way for our operations, how to make it more relief for the users and give it him more time to be focused more on the patient itself. So through our features, through our mode of anesthesia controlled, automatic anesthesia controlled anesthesia, we can precisely adjust our targeted anesthesia agents we need to deliver to the patient, and precisely we will get what we already set it to the patient. So we will make more anesthesia stability. We will release the user from interfering a lot with our machine. So they will be only observing what is going on and what happened to the patient. And of course, we will reduce our agent's cost. Is one of the most important things. Also, we need to have more comprehensive overview on our patients. So by using our modular design anesthesia machine, that we can add our the bispectral index module, the NMT module, so we can now have the elements of the anesthesia of the consciousness and the relaxation of the patient. We can have now monitored in one machine. Also, to make the calculation, as we saw for the Mac, through our golden standard Artima technology, we can provide the anesthesia agent module. So in this way, we can make the calculation for the Mac delivered to the patient. Also, we need to have an eye on the post-operative complications that may happen to the patient. So we are providing a lot of lung protective tools, such as the transpulmonary pressure monitoring. So we can have the titral settings for the PEEP and the maximum pressure and make the exact limitation for the tidal volume delivered to the patient. Also the lung recruitment tools. We have two maneuvers to make this lung protective settings through even from a sustained inflation and a one-step lung recruitment or the multi-step lung recruitment toolkit. So even for this lung recruitment, we can make it scheduled during the operation. We don't have to make it manually every time during the long operation time. We can schedule it maybe every 5 minutes, every 10 minutes, so it will be settings from the beginning and going on. Also to have the indication of the total tidal volume I'm delivering to the patient per his idle body weight, we have the indicator that will give me the calculation of the tidal volume changing. When I'm setting up the tidal volume delivered to the patient, it always gives me the hint that this is the amount that you are delivering to this patient. So we can make it more safer to the patient and avoiding the paratrauma and lung injury. This is the transpulmonary pressure and how we can use it through our machine. We can connect the patient through a transducer going through the esophageal and making the real calculation from internal body of the patient and getting the target optimal PEEP and make the limitation for the tidal volume and peak pressure. Also, for the ICU level ventilation, we have our autopilot mode. It's adaptive minute ventilation mode. This mode gives the ability to the machine to control and to make more synchronized between the machine and the patient, moving on from the spontaneous to the mandatory mode of ventilation depends on the patient demand and what he needs. So if you can imagine to have the AMV, to have the anesthesia, the automatic anesthesia control, and all of this together. And you can imagine if you are driving a Tesla car. So you are just putting the target, you're just putting the minute ventilation target, and you're enjoying what is going on with the machine and observing, more focusing on the patient. The second pillar is to make a better user experience. So now all of us know the headache of making the testing at the beginning of the day to prepare for the list and take some time. Maybe some nurses forgot to make this test. Maybe you can find and see some problems during our procedures. So now we have our automatic pre-use system check. It's only 3.5 minutes to go. We can schedule it from the beginning, and automatically the machine will make the testing on the time and date you are giving to the machine automatically without no interfering from the user. So it's very simple. Also, to make it more easier for the user, we make it, as we can see, our display is the higher, bigger display with 18.5 inch. More higher resolution, also the maneuvering of the display, so it will be more convenient for any sitting side of the doctor using the machine. Also the controlling maneuver through the knob or the touch screen, it's much better for use. Also, as we learned from Dr. Lee, that sometimes the user maybe is distracted with focusing on seeing some issues related to the anesthesia machine or to other devices. So to bring all this together as a status indication inside the anesthesia machine, we provided our intuitive status indicator display that we can see from it what is happening with all the connection of the machine, from the type of ventilation we are using. Is it manual? Is it automatic? The fresh gas delivery, the power, the gas supply connection and its pressures. Also regarding the electronic vaporizer situation, if it's empty, near to be empty, it's full, is it okay or not? And also for our scavenging system. And we'll talk about this in the last slide. Also to make it more easier for multi-user of the device, or even for a one user to the device with a different clinical scenarios. We provided now on the machine that we can adjust or customize up to 10 different profiles. So it will be more convenient for the user. Now I'm going to make this operation on that time. So this operation I need to see this moves and this toolkit and this display. So from the beginning I'm already make my own customized display, and just with an easy way to load it, and finally you can see it on display. And of course, the more together, the more stronger. So we heard about the integration of the machine, the anesthesia machine workstation. All the devices can be connected to the anesthesia machine. So I think if the inline went to the Olympic Games, it may have the golden medal for pulling weights. So it's as we can see, we can make a lot of varieties for connectivity, for the patient data management with the hospital information system, combining the docking station for our infusion, and also even to extend with the ultrasound. So all are together in a one unit. For our third pillar is to have more green and safer operating room. We need to minimize the gas emission inside the operating room, of course. So that's why we have our technology for the optimizers to control the low flow of fresh gas anesthesia can deliver to the patient. In this case, we will save a lot of new agents that can be delivered to the patient, and for sure this will reflect on reducing the emission of the gases from the anesthesia machine. Also, to avoid any accidental leakage, we can use our feature of making a pause for the flow. This pause, we can have it up to 2 minutes maximum, 30 seconds per each time. We can stop this ventilation temporarily if we have see suddenly or accidentally any problems may happen, like the leakage, or if you want to make some intubation or make a suction, so we can make the flow pause on our anesthesia machine. And also for the sample gas return, we can reuse and recycle this gas return coming from either from the anesthesia gas module or from the CO2 module. So it will be recycled again, not going out of the anesthesia machine to the ambient room. For our last but not least, the scavenging system. Now we're having the electronic scavenging system. To avoid the many problems that may happen from the pressure that may face with the active gas scavenging system, maybe suddenly turn it off or something like this. So the electronic anesthesia gas scavenging system gives me the ability to check automatically through our anesthesia machine for the scavenging system, giving the indicators, as we mentioned in the status indicator display. I can see what is the status of the scavenging system, if it's working on, if the pressure is going so high, if the pressure is very low, or if it's turned off. And during the surgery also I can monitor that. And the most important thing that after I finish the case or the operation is finished and make the case end, so it will be automatically turned off. This will reflect that reducing the energy consumption that may happen from the machine or the consumption from the gas network of the hospital. So as we can see from all these features and benefits, that maybe for a super high-end machine, the cost may be higher than the traditional or the mid to high range of anesthesia machine. But we can, the cost of the ownership or the cost of the selling of the first time, it will be once. But what is the most important is our cost of ownership. After getting this machine, what it will cost me for the long time period. So now we are talking about the cost of the running of the machine, cost of the time of the doctor using this machine, cost of the consumption that we are having with the machine. So if you are calculating all of this together, for sure you will find that having such technology inside a machine will saving a lot of costs for you on the long term. So we cannot only have a see on the first spot costs that we will pay for having this technology. We have to looking forward, and I think we are deserve this in my country, in Egypt, here in Kenya, for our continent to have all this technology to provide more health care to the patients of our own. So this was my presentation regarding the A9. I have another presentation regarding some mid-level range model, and I think it's a very popular model here in Kenya, the Watch 65 and 65 Pro. On last April, we, Mindray, have done some renovation and some upgrading to our Watu series for the Watu 65 and Watu 65 Pro. It's my pleasure to give you this information about what happens and what is new in these new machines. Firstly, we now have our high-flow nasal cannula, as we saw on the A9. Now it's available for the 65 and 65 Pro, up to 60 liters per minute. In the old version, we only had the low-flow auxiliary, which was up to 15 liters per minute. Now it's high-flow nasal cannula, and I'm proud to say that this is only done by Mindray. No other brand has these features. Also, the optimizer now is available also in the Watu 65. The anesthesia agent measurement through our anesthesia gas module. Now we can see even the costs that we are consuming during the operation. Only we have to set our currency, the cost of the agent per hour, and automatically the machine will make this calculation for us. So now I will have continuously observing how much I pay for every single operation I make. The recruitment now we was having only the multi-step in the old version. Now we have also the one-step procedure to sustain inflation, and also to make the people exit after finishing our maneuver. You can set what is the settings for the PEEP I need to have to the patient after finishing this recruitment. So easily you can make the settings, put the PEEP, and automatically the machine, after finishing the recruitment, will get back to the settings you need. Of course, for anesthesia agent prediction, we heard this function and benefit from Dr. Lee's presentation. We have now our anesthesia agent prediction, or the 65 Pro. Also for the cardiac bypass, now we have it on the automatic ventilation. In the past, we have only these features with our manual ventilation. So now to provide more flexibility, more maneuver for the user during the bypass procedures, now we have it also with the automatic mode on the pressure control and volume control modes. To have also the tidal volume indication per idle body weight, now getting combined with the idle body weight and the target volume I set. Now I have the notification for the tidal volume indication. Also, to make it more unified with our A series, we make an elegant industrial design. Now the design for this machines the desk will be a stainless working table. This is providing more seamless to make easy to clean and to provide the right disinfection. For a brief for what happened to our machine, the screen now for the Watto EX65 is becoming 15-inch, and the both of models now becoming a capacitive touch screen with much more easier to make the maneuver on the screen for the gesturing, and also for the better resolution. And the working table becoming stainless steel. For the peak flow, we enlarged the range of the peak flow for the 65 Pro to be 180 liter per minute instead of 120. Also, we enlarged the range of the tidal volume and the maximum pressure. Now, as you can see from the tidal volume range, that will be met more preferably for the neonatal patient procedures, as we can start from the 10 milliliter on the volume control and 5 milliliter on the pressure control with the volume guarantee. And also for the maximum pressure, we extended to the 80 instead of 70 at the maximum pressure. Also, the optimizer now is available on both models. The anesthesia agent cost available on both models as an option. The anesthesia agent prediction is only available for the Watch 65, as the Watch 65 has the electronic mixer, but 65 Pro is the semi-electronic, so if we need to make the anesthesia agent, we have to make it with the electronic mixer, so it's only available on our 65 Pro. The high-flow nasal cannula also, to have it with electronic mixer, it's only available as option with 65 Pro. The lung recruitment, both now for the two maneuvers we have available for the both models. The APRV, now this mode is available on 65 Pro. Of course, the indication and the CPB auto mode available. So, as we can see from this installation base in Kenya, for the top 20 hospitals we have, this information I got from my colleagues Rogers, we can see that the majority of our installation here relying on the mid to high level of anesthesia machine, which represent about 62% of our installation. So, for sure, we have to provide the high technology to all of market, to provide the maximum performance to the market, but also we cannot, as a Mindray, blind our eye from what is benefit to the market. Now we are using 62% of the market share. We have to invest also on our existing machine, how to make it better performance, how to have advanced technology inside it. So we are not only keening on the high-end anesthesia machine, we also look to our mid to high and what is the demand for the market from this. So this was my part of the day. Hopefully that you enjoyed my presentation, and please enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you.
Shukran, Mr. Mustafa. Before we take a break, I'm going to call up front Mr. Tim and Mr. Kitonga. Kindly come over to the front for, I think there is something you need to do before we take our break.
Thank you, Mustafa, again, and thank you, Dr. Okello. We want to make sure that as we proceed for a small break, which is tea break, then you also get a chance to interact with the machine that we talked about. And for that reason, we want to officially launch the machine. And I'll do that with my brother Tim. And Mustafa has come all the way to do that beautiful presentation. Thank you so much, Mustafa. So, having said that, here is the baby. We are not unveiling it. We are not covering the machine. We chose not to do that. We just do it differently this time around. And for that reason, It's now my joy to declare the newly released N9 by Mindray officially launched in Kenya. Yeah? Thank you so much. You'll have some time to interact with the machine. The only thing that I will request is, as a way of observing the COVID protocols, we suggest and request that we don't have doctors overcrowding around the machine, and let's do that in turn just to make sure that we keep social distancing. Tim?
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone. And then thank you.
Thank you very much for launching the new child in town. We hope it's going to make our lives better, going to be friendly to the environment, and make it cheaper for us to offer safe anesthesia and critical care services to our patients. At this moment, we are going to take our tea break, or health break, as I want to call it. And after that, we are going to come back in for the next session of our talks. I think, Ireri, is that the case? We can take the break? Okay, so kindly feel welcome for the tea.
62-year-old female, sudden cardiac arrest. Transfer to Basildon CTC.
An ambulance is on its way.
Analysing now.
Analysing now, send it to concentration.
Once a patient is, for instance, have to go to the CT, then we don't have to alter the monitoring system to another transport monitoring system, because we are just taking the small one, put it on the bed, and we can click it in radiology as well. So then we've got a larger monitoring system again. So it's very easy, and it saves us a lot of time. One of the most impressive features are the clear view of the screen. It's very clear figures, very clear colors. Also, we've got repeating screens, so there are large screens in several areas of the emergency department, and those are giving you a nice overview of all the patients. And once one patient is going into an alarm, you will see it immediately. So it's very easy for the nurses to work in those areas, because they don't have to stick in front of the central monitoring where they are working. But thanks to the repeat screens, it's really helping them to provide the necessary care for the patient.
When we first moved in, the nurses and some of the medical staff were apprehensive because it's long rather than round. But because of the individual rooms, the nurses were worried about visibility.
When we were designing the unit, we didn't just want to recreate what we already had on a bigger scale. We wanted to do something different. By designing all side rooms, that helped with infection control and with privacy and dignity. but it became a challenge with patient safety. So that's where we looked at ideas and we were looking at new technologies.
So we've got some central monitoring solutions which link into the monitors. So A, I could see that patient, but B, I can make sure their monitoring is there so I can see if there's any immediate issues when they're coming in. So I think it's fair to say that many of the issues they thought they would encounter haven't materialised. I suppose the cooperation since about 2011. We were looking at new equipment for the new ITU. In 2009, we looked at all the market, and one of the devices we looked at was the V-Series. We then did some work with Mindray on some of the software upgrades to that system. But at the same time, we entered into a cooperation agreement. We would have input, for example, into development of other products, specifically patient monitoring. I think it works very well. We found both the UK team for Mindray and then the link into the Chinese team to be very responsive. So for example, the space between the numbers was actually much wider on the V-Series, and it's not how you would write it down. So in the N series, they've done little things with the interface which the staff actually recognise from when they write. Little things like that that give the nurses or the medical staff the confidence that the system will do what they want to do it in a way which works for them. So I think in the future, even now, the important thing for us as a hospital is that we treat our patients to the standard they would expect with the best outcome in a safe environment and as risk-free as possible. So it's the overall quality of the care we provide. When patients, particularly in the United Kingdom, are going to be much more involved in their own healthcare and have access to their own information. Tying those systems together by cooperating with medical device companies such as Mindray or IT vendors is going to be very, very important. It's going to be a much more holistic approach to healthcare.
We opened our hospital in 2016 on the 18th of January, and we moved from our existing facility at Fig Tree, which is 100 beds. It was a great opportunity to be involved in a project like this. Wollongong in the past hasn't really had that state-of-the-art facility like we have now, and a lot of patients still unfortunately go up to Sydney for their healthcare services, and we've really turned that around since we've been open, and we hope to turn that around even further into the future. That's the plan.
Working in intensive care before working in this role, we did a lot of transports to CTs and things like that. So there was quite a lot of equipment to take before you even, took your bedside monitor with you.
Often we had to transfer the patient from their normal bedside monitor to a transport monitor. So that meant that what we had to do was actually remove them from the monitor they were already on and then transfer them to a different monitor.
We wanted an integrated solution across the hospital. Mindray's certainly done that and have been great at providing that integration across the whole hospital.
To me, the T1 is the heart of the system.
The T1 makes transporting patients a lot easier because we can simply clip the transport module out from the bedside monitor and take it with us.
You pull the transport module out and just simply plug it into ICU.
If there's any deterioration in that patient, we can see straight away, so it enables us to act quickly.
The patient's data is carried with them throughout the hospital and also saves us time from transferring them to a different monitor. The T1 also communicates to a central monitor that we have at the nurse's station, and that makes it really easy for us because we can actually monitor the patient from the nurse's desk, and it means that we don't have to disturb them if they're resting or if they have visitors.
It's all connected. It's connected to a printer as well, so we can print off the information from the operating theatre, put those in the patient's notes as well. So just the whole system is excellent.
It also lets us locate old data from patients, so patients that have been discharged, if any of our consultants were wishing to get that data or wanted to look for any arrhythmias for some of their patients that had already gone home, we're able to pull that data from discharged patients.
As far as the anaesthetic machines go, they're user-friendly, so we can move from the information in the anaesthetic machine can be then moved to the recovery unit, so we've got a consistency of observations on that patient throughout the operation as well as their recovery period.
The support from Mindray is great. They're a phone call away, and given the technology is so simple to use, a lot of the issues can be sorted out over the phone. They're a lot more hands-on, they're a lot more, at the other end of the phone, whereas a lot of the bigger companies, it can be a lot of hard work getting through to talk to someone that can actually help you with your problem.
Mindray were very accommodating with helping us to assist to achieve training, and they didn't leave until all the staff were trained, so that sort of commitment is a little bit unheard of from some of the big companies. The staff all rave about the product. They're all very happy with it.
The team have responded really well. They're really enjoying working with the equipment. Because it's so easy to use, it really is.
Working with Mindray has been easy. I've used a lot of different systems, I've worked through a lot of different hospitals, and this is definitely the most user-friendly.
The products speak for itself, the equipment's great, but to have that support is key to the success and ongoing success of the relationship, I think.
On est Trauma Center, donc on reçoit toute la polytraumatologie de la région Midi-Pyrénées. On a aussi la neurochirurgie, donc des patients qui sont cérébrolésés. On a des post-opératoires de chirurgie lourde et on a aussi des détresses respiratoires avec des syndromes de détresse respiratoire aiguë de l'adulte. Donc nos principaux défis pour optimiser la prise en charge de ce type particulier de patients, ça va être d'avoir un monitoring adapté à ce type de patient. Je vais pas vous parler, en termes de paramètres mesurés, je ne vais pas vous parler des paramètres standards qu'on retrouve dans tous les monitorings, mais plutôt de ce que nous, on a recherché dans la solution Mindray. Ce sont, alors, sachant qu'on a une population de patients polytraumatisés et cérébrolésés, ça va être le monitorage du capteur de la pression intracrânienne, le monitorage de l'électroencéphalogramme. On fait pas mal d'hémodynamique. Il y a aussi le monitorage par thermodilution, donc par picot. Donc ça fait partie un petit peu de ce qui nous a décidé dans nos choix.
Le système Bénévision a été très facile à utiliser pour nous, car c'est un système très intuitif et que nous avons été très bien accompagnés par les équipes de Mindray pour former le personnel et toute l'équipe infirmière.
Nous avons procédé à l'installation de la gamme de moniteurs N22 dans un service en activité. Nous avons demandé aux équipes Mindray de préparer au maximum le matériel à l'extérieur du service et de finaliser l'installation lorsque un box ou une chambre se libérait. Ce qui a été fait. L'installation s'est déroulée vraiment sans problème. La solution de monitorage Mindray utilise un réseau privé qui communique avec le réseau du CHU par le biais de passerelles. Ces comptes permettent de recevoir les différentes mises à jour et répondent donc à la sécurité informatique du CHU. Enfin, l'implémentation du dossier patient informatisé par les données des dispositifs médicaux externes nous permet d'éviter d'avoir à saisir ces données et donc d'éviter les erreurs de saisie.
Où le côté tactile est important dans le quotidien. Il faut vraiment qu'on soit fiable à la fois sur le monitoring, sur le côté tactile. Ce qu'on a recherché aussi dans ce type de monitoring, c'est d'avoir une connexion donc, avec notre logiciel métier, puisqu'on a une disparition complète du dossier papier, on fait tout en informatique, et il fallait que vraiment on ait une interface qui soit fiable et efficace. Déjà, c'est aussi la possibilité, enfin c'est le choix qu'on a fait de mettre la walking station à l'extérieur. Ça nous permet, quand on a à faire une prescription, à valider une alarme, changer nos amplitudes d'alarme, de pouvoir le faire de l'extérieur, sans rentrer dans la chambre du patient. Donc ça présente un avantage, non seulement pour le patient, si le patient est endormi, on ne va pas rentrer dans la chambre et le stimuler. Ça présente aussi un avantage en termes d'infection nosocomiale, parce qu'on n'est pas obligé de rentrer, sortir. On peut tout faire de l'extérieur. Ce type d'équipement s'intègre dans les nouvelles recommandations de ce qu'on appelle, nous, le mieux vivre en réanimation. Et ça, c'est quand même, pour le patient, moins de nuisances sonores, pas d'alarme, moins d'angoisse, puisqu'il ne voit pas ses paramètres. Donc dans le mieux vivre en réanimation, dans les innovations, il y a effectivement la possibilité de faire rentrer des musiciens dans des chambres de réanimation pour qu'ils puissent écouter de la musique et que ça les sorte du contexte médical. Et dans les perspectives aussi que l'on a dans le service en termes d'innovation et qui seraient liées d'ailleurs au monitoring et à l'agencement et l'architecture de la réanimation, c'est l'utilisation des smart pagers.
Grâce aux smart pagers, on pourra fermer les portes des chambres des patients et assurer quand même leur surveillance, ce qui améliorera grandement leur sommeil et leur vécu de l'hospitalisation en réanimation.
Je crois que c'est ce qui fait toute la force de cette installation, les couloirs de la réanimation devenant des espaces de travail pluridisciplinaires et les box devenant des espaces vraiment silencieux pour une meilleure convalescence du patient.
Welcome back to this educational activity. Those who are joining us online, welcome back. Hope you had a nice break as well. We are going to continue with our talks, the clinical presentations, and at this juncture I'm going to invite one of our very experienced and senior members and that is Dr. Idris Chikove. Dr. Idris is a consultant anesthesiologist and a critical care practitioner at the Kenyatta National Hospital, and is also the lead person and the chairperson of the Critical Care Society of Kenya. Dr. Idris is going to talk to us about advanced perioperative monitoring. Idris, the stage is yours.
So, good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. President, for that kind introduction. I was given a very long list of things to talk about, but I thought that was not practicable. And also, when I look at the guys who presented before me, they have done a lot of the talking. So I will not waste your time by repeating what they have said. Okay, so I'm going to look at, the introduction to monitoring, and I'm going to focus on more on metabolic monitoring and a bit on electrophysiology. So in metabolic, I'll just be looking at. All right, sorry about that. So the outline of the talk is basically I'll look at introduction, and then I'll focus more on metabolic. So this is just on CO2 monitoring, and then electrophysiology, maybe on neuromuscular monitoring, just the two things. So what do I mean by monitoring? This is basically when we perform continuous observations of physiologic variables. And our intention is to reveal changes in organ function, whether the patient is under anesthesia or critical care. We hope that when they present to those two places, we don't worsen what they already have. We intend to make the function of their organs better. And so when we show very bad trends, we want to intervene in different ways. And so the effect of our intervention then has to be, again, picked so that we do some kind of self-appraisal. This has been, been done by anesthesiologists. Give fluid, check the response, or change the minute volume and then look at the response to your carbon dioxide. But Dr. Lee has already said that now there's that automation. Whenever there are changes in one variable, it may prompt an effect on the machine, like in a feedback sort of a loop. So with patients do require advanced monitoring. We're looking at the patient with severe cardiopulmonary disease, heart disease, guys with COPD, restrictive lung disease. And I think as anesthesiologists now we have to brace ourselves because the COVID lung is coming, to the operating room with restrictive lung disease. So the guys who are good in regional anesthesia, I think, are blessed because they may have to avoid intubation. But those of us who are limited to intubating, we're going to have a hard time. Because those patients will just be breathing maybe very well before anesthesia, but once you put them on the tube and on the ventilator, it may actually be very difficult to get them off because they have changes in lung function. Neuromuscular disease, again, patients have stayed in the ICU for a long time, they may have muscle weakness, the post-ICU syndrome, and so they may need a bit of neurophysiology. Vascular surgery, we are seeing lots of aortic surgeries. I think in the investment by the counties, we are seeing more aortic aneurysm, for example, in Kenyatta National Hospital. A long time ago, they used to come when they're already ruptured, but right now they're being picked a bit earlier because there are CT scans all over the place. And whenever there's something that cannot be understood by the clinician, they send the patient to CT scan. So in a way, it's helping. When you have surgery involving major body cavity, like the thorax, the abdomen, you're touching on important organs like the pancreas. We have liver transplant. So this has been associated with major fluid shifts, making, monitoring. The basic monitoring may not be able to answer most of the questions or the queries that we'll be trying to, investigate. And then, like I alluded earlier on, we have lots of respiratory failure now with altered lung mechanics. The lungs are either stiffer or too compliant, and also changes in blood flow to the lungs. So we have also ventilator perfusion mismatch. And so we look at carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide is not merely a waste product. It can also be used in monitoring. So it's produced when we, do the internal respiration, where we combine the products of the nutritional components like glucose, amino acids, lipids. We burn them in the presence of oxygen to produce carbon dioxide and water. So carbon dioxide is actually transported in blood. And as opposed to oxygen, carbon dioxide is very lipid soluble, almost 21 to 30 times. And so when you see changes in your carbon dioxide, it may be closely related to blood flow, especially in the lung. So we say carbon dioxide is not diffusion limited like oxygen, because when you have lung pathology, you may have issues with movement of oxygen from the alveolar to the arteriolar side. But you don't get that with carbon dioxide because it easily crosses the barriers. So the changes are more related to blood flow in the lung rather than diffusion problems. So we say carbon dioxide is flow or capacity limited rather than diffusion limited. And so the changes in carbon dioxide may be attributable to pulmonary blood flow. And whenever we want to look at the levels of carbon dioxide in blood. They may be related to production. So high production leads to high carbon dioxide levels in blood. And also high elimination rate of carbon dioxide leads to low carbon dioxide levels. So you can say PaCO2 is directly related to carbon dioxide production and inversely related to carbon dioxide elimination. Increased production comes from hypercatabolic states. The traditional sepsis, stereotoxicosis, those of us still using those gases that may give us malignant hyperthermia. And too much carbohydrates will give us a lot of carbon dioxide because the respiratory quotient of carbohydrates is really high as opposed to the other nutritional components. And lately we're talking about cytokine storm. Every time you attend a discussion, you hear cytokine storm. So that leads to hypercatabolism and too much CO2. So how is elimination happening in the body? Every time we breathe out, we remove carbon dioxide. So the product of your expired tidal volume and the frequency of breathing, in a way, help us to sort of control the CO2 in the body. So when you set a tidal volume, you're hoping that that will help you to eliminate, and that's what we call the ventilation. So on the mechanical ventilator, we see the VE, which stands for expired minute volume. But not all of that sets tidal volume actually goes into carbon dioxide elimination. Up to generation 16 of your tracheobronchial tree is the conducting zone, basically the dead space where you have wasted ventilation. From generation 17 to 23, there's carbon dioxide elimination. And so whenever you see hypercapnia, it may not necessarily be due to carbon dioxide production that is increased. It may be due to the fact that you may be giving normal tidal volume, but then the dead space is also worsening, encroaching into your effective ventilation. So your effective ventilation basically is a product of your frequency and your tidal volume less your wasted ventilation, which is your dead space. So in summary, basically, the level of your oxygen in your body is actually dependent on your carbon dioxide production. It's also dependent on your effective ventilation, which is your alveolar ventilation, which is basically a product of your, or rather a function of your total tidal volume and your dead space. So what has been happening lately after the COVID pandemic came to us, we've been seeing a lot of changes in the lung, changes in mechanics, and changes in blood flow. And I would like to explore a bit on the dead space as a very important monitoring tool in patients with hypercapnia. So in normal physiology, the dead space doesn't change unless one is pregnant, or maybe they have a disease affecting the lung walls and even the bronchial walls, like in bronchiectasis. In normal physiology, the dead space is 2.2 multiplied by your predicted body weight. So if you're a 70-kilo man, your anatomic dead space is around 150, 154, thereabout. And so if you're given a tidal volume of 500, maybe 350 out of the 500 is the one that is effective in carbon dioxide elimination. But then now beyond your anatomic dead space, there's a functional dead space, what you call the alveolar dead space. And this one is not be now related to changes in pulmonary blood flow. So when you add your alveolar and anatomic dead space, you get your total dead space, which is your physiologic dead space. And when you go back to maybe physiology, we had the changes in pulmonary blood flow. So when you are erect, the upper parts of your lung has very poor perfusion. But as you go lower down, the perfusion to your lung is actually more continuous. So at this point, there's actually very limited pulmonary blood flow in this zone 1. So even if you're producing carbon dioxide, even if internal respiration is taking place, that carbon dioxide has to be transported by blood to the lung. Once it gets to the lung, then gas exchange happens. But you find in this situation that there's actually no pulmonary blood flow. So what happens is that the PaCO2 will be high, but what is picked by your end-tidal carbon dioxide monitor is very little. So there's going to be a very big difference between your arterial carbon dioxide and your end-tidal carbon dioxide. And that may actually be indicative of a worsening physiologic dead space. And that's what we experience because of COVID. There's thrombosis. So thrombosis in COVID in the pulmonary vasculature will actually mimic the zone 1 of waste in the lung. When you get a major PE, or sometimes when you put very huge tidal volumes, because we're always motivated to put 10 mLs per kilo, you may actually increase your alveolar pressure more than the arteriolar pressure. You end up pinching your pulmonary vessels such that now there's going to be a very big difference between your arteriolar and end-tidal carbon dioxide. They've been talking about recruitment maneuvers, how we can set PEEPs and everything. And it's been done manually, and it takes maybe even 45 minutes to get the best PEEP. But now I think with the machines, we may be able to titrate PEEP, in an automated manner, where you set the variables. You say, I want to start at a PEEP of 5, all the way to PEEP of 30, in steps of maybe, the PEEP goes up by 5 and stays for 3 minutes until the end. And then after that, the machine decides what was your optimum PEEP. So optimum PEEP is one where you not only get good oxygenation, but you also get the minimum shunt or the maximum shunt reduction, and also minimize your dead space without causing adverse cardiopulmonary, changes. Because when you increase PEEP, for example, you may get hypotension because it may reduce your venous return, but it may also increase your pulmonary vascular resistance because you're literally squeezing the vessels in the lung. So for you to say which the optimum PEEP is, you may want to, again, look at compliance, oxygenation, dead space, and then pulmonary vascular resistance. So this is a series of PEEPs that were used, maybe from 5 all the way to 30. But when you look at maybe this 25, a PEEP of 25, for example, was the best in this patient, in that what you're seeing here, the difference between your carbon dioxide in blood and carbon dioxide in the capnograph was minimum. When you look at these other situations, the gap was really big. And then again, when you look at your cardiac output, it was optimum, at a PEEP of 25. But as you increase the PEEP further to 30, you find that there was a reduction in your cardiac output and a worsening in your arteriolar end-tidal carbon dioxide gap. So actually, when you do get your arterial carbon dioxide and your end-tidal, you subtract the two to get the gap, then you divide it by your PaCO2, and you get an estimate of your dead space. This was described by Bohr, who was not a Kalenjin, but a Danish scientist, right? Way back, like a century ago. And so when you do this math, it's actually very useful as a bedside tool to look at the pulmonary blood flow. And so where have I used it? Actually, as late as last week, there was a patient who had bilateral pulmonary embolism, and my junior doctor thought that there was a problem with the capnograph because the reading was like 20 millimeters of mercury, but in the arterial blood, the PaCO2 was like 50. So I told him, you do not always say the gadget is bad. Sometimes it's due to the patient problem. And so the patient was treated. So every day we would chart the gap, and the gap was actually, narrowing after, giving thrombolytics. So basically, we could see that we are reperfusing the lung. The only other way is to do serial, angiograms, But how difficult or how easy it is? A patient who's hemodynamically unstable with a severe COVID-19 pneumonia. So for you to be able to say there's good perfusion, it means you have to keep on taking this patient to the radiology seat for CT scan. But if you do something like monitor the gap, and this doesn't actually increase the cost because you're always doing arterial blood gas analysis, and you only want to have a carbon dioxide monitor or adapter, which shall be used throughout the duration of stay, let's say in the ICU. So the patient, you could see that as the gap narrows, everything was looking up. Do the PEEP titration. But now it used to be done, and it would take a long time. Now we can do it with ease on the monitors. And of course, when you do intubate and ventilate patients with huge tidal volumes, it can actually predict that, this patient will have hypotension. And so you set the PEEP that may not give you those adverse effects. So traditionally, we've been using the waveform capnograph. And so you compare the arterial carbon dioxide, which is this horizontal line, and then you compare it with your end-tidal carbon dioxide. So the gap actually represents your alveolar dead space. So the bigger the gap, the bigger the alveolar dead space. But you see, waveform capnography is basically the carbon dioxide on the y-axis and time on the x-axis. So during inspiration, you do not record any carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is recorded on the expiratory phase. So that is good in that it gives you important information. But even better, you can have what you call the volumetric capnography, where it plots, again, carbon dioxide on the y-axis, but instead of time, it actually plots the volume, so that you'll be able to now tell how much dead space there is in real time. So it actually gives you your dead space in mLs per breath, so that if the PE is worsening, you can tell, so that if the PEEP is bad, you can tell, so that if your tidal volume is you're distending the lung, you can still tell. So I think this is a very important tool in the sense that it saves time, it saves, money, and, it improves, because they say the best marker or the best measurement for recruitment is actually a CT scan. Because you're comparing the atelectatic lung to the aerated lung. But what we do? We disconnect the patient from the main ventilator and you put them on the transport ventilator. That act of disconnecting already de-recruits the lung. So by the time you're going to CT scan, what you're measuring is actually something totally different from what you intended to find out. So when you bring these things at the bedside, they are continuous. You can go back into the history or the storage part of the machine and say, how has this dead space been happening? So again, we have complex patients coming to theater, and we have to monitor neurophysiologically things like neuromuscular blockade, the onset of action, the duration of action, and whether it's still any residual effect, maybe after anesthesia. So this is one of the things that we do. We put the electrodes. We like to monitor the strength of the adductor polishes. But when the patient is under anesthesia and the arms are tucked in the anatomic position, you may not be able to access the polishes. So you may even use the orbicularis oculi to just tell you that maybe your intubating conditions have been optimized. So you want to intubate when the patient is actually paralyzed. Some of us are in a hurry, running to theaters. You want to intubate this one quickly so that you can intubate the other one. But you want to intubate when there's no, contraction. All the train of force have disappeared. So that's optimal intubating condition. And then maybe if they're doing abdominal surgery, those guys are always telling us to paralyze the patient to add more paralysis. Unbeknownst to them, we don't paralyze matumbos because they think that when the intestines are still moving because of peristalsis, some of them tell you to add paralytic agents. They don't know that, smooth muscles don't have a well-organized neuromuscular junction, like ongeza paralysis, but, So we can actually titrate a surgical anesthesia when you have like 1 or 2 counts. And then you can even decide what the best time to give your reversal in anesthesia. So when you have 2 to 3 counts. And then things like the Sugammadex can be given anytime. It doesn't matter what is happening on the neuromuscular monitoring tool. Very, very important because sometimes we may take patients to the PACU, before adequate paralysis. We know our monitoring in the post-anesthesia care unit, especially in very many parts of the country, is not as adequate as the theater monitoring. And, we wish that maybe anesthesiologists could also take calls in the post-anesthesia care unit. That is not happening. So you can easily prematurely extubate a patient, then they go to recurarize, then they get, negative pressure pulmonary edema, they get hypoxemia, they get to be reintubated, and then you have like unplanned intensive care admission. Again, we want to use these neuromuscular monitoring tools when you're dealing with the obese patients, especially after rocuronium. In Kenyatta National Hospital, once in a while, we get patients who already have muscle weakness from, immunologic situation like myasthenia gravis. And also in critical care, the fact that now we're using lots of neuromuscular blockers, like all COVID patients, tend to be paralyzed, especially early in the disease. In as much as we try as much as possible not to use the neuromuscular blocker, we use them to a very large extent. I think in the last 2 years, we've used quite a bit of neuromuscular blocker, ending up giving what you call ICU, post-ICU syndrome, which involves now muscle weakness. Very difficult to liberate these patients from the mechanical ventilator, just because the more you don't use your muscles, the more atonic they become, and it becomes really, really difficult to liberate them. So we need to titrate our neuromuscular blockade, just to make it easier for us to liberate these patients from mechanical ventilation. My talk actually ends here. I didn't want to do so much because I think Dr. Lee, the guy from Egypt, I'm trying to remember his name, Mustafa, has actually alluded to bees, so I will not take more time, and thank you for attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Idris, for that presentation on advanced perioperative patient monitoring. As we head towards the tail end of our activities for the day, I'm going to call our next speaker, and that is Mr. Rogers Nyangeri. Mr. Rogers is a clinical application specialist with MINRE, and is going to talk to us about something called M-Connect IT Solutions. Rogers, are you available? Thank you.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. You're sounding as if you're so tired. We're going to break this monotony of doing a lot of slides. So, and I'm going to do just a brief introduction of what is M-Connect. I think you're wondering what is M-Connect. It's a brief introduction of M-Connect, and then I do it real here on the anesthetic machine and the patient monitor so that we see what is M-Connect. So my name is Rogers Nyangeri. I'm a clinical application specialist in charge of patient monitor and life support medical equipment at Mindray Company. And today I want to introduce to you this M-Connect concept. And with the current trends that we have, especially the COVID era, where you want to limit your interactions with these patients who have COVID, you want to manage your patients remotely from the isolation wards. You want to have solutions where you're able to see patients' information where you're at your office. So these are solutions that will help us a lot. So today, I'm going to talk about that. So, and the content of my talk today is about just a brief introduction of that M-Connect. And then I'll talk specifically about 3 solutions that we have in Mindray Company. That's ER solutions in terms of transportation, and then OR operation room solution that we have, and then lastly ICU solution that we have. So under M-Connect introduction, these are the challenges that we face every day in our daily work in the hospitals. Patient safety. We are worried of our patient safety every time. And this includes patients' data, the reports management. You have a lot of paperwork, a lot of writings. Sometimes you lose even those papers, right? So how can we manage this? And sometimes you have a very complicated workflow. So how can we put all this together so that we ensure that our patient safety is adhered to? And another thing is about risk of infection, COVID era. How can we avoid this? We as the caregivers to our patients. And then having constrained transportation in our hospitals. You have a patient from ICU. You want to take this patient to probably a consultant has come and has requested a CT scan in an ICU patient. This patient is intubated, right? And that time, as you're taking a patient to CT scan, you want to continue monitoring your patient, but because of inadequate medical devices that we have in our hospitals, we are unable to manage these patients well. So you find this gap of monitoring these patients. But with M-Connect, how can we solve this? We're going to look at that. And then lastly, with this COVID era, most of the consultants, we agree that they are aged. It's Nukweli. They are aged. Right? And the people that we have in our clinical setups, they are young doctors. And they need to consult more, right? So how can they consult and the consultants are home? How can we consult with them? So with telehealth consultations, we're able to provide these solutions with Mindray Company. And today I want to show you how we're going to do this. So infection control in COVID pandemic areas, transportation issues, pre-hospital transportation issues, and lastly, telehealth. How can we manage all this? And then look at this paperwork. We agree that this is what we are doing in Kenya. Setup. A lot of paperwork, right? A lot of files. You're looking for a particular patient's information, probably an ECG was done. Dr. Idris, let me use your name. He comes to ICU and asks the nurse probably, where's the ECG that was done last week? They're not able to trace it. So how can we manage all this with this paperwork that we have? Look at this doctor. He's seated with a lot of paperwork, right? Far right, a lot of paperwork. So he's going through all this paperwork every time. So how can we avoid this? And lastly, I think most of the anesthetists are able to relate this form, right? So you're looking for particular information in this form. Are you able to find it? So there's a question. Are you able to find it? It will be difficult. Okay, lastly, look at this. In our MOH guidelines that we're supposed to keep patients' records for around 10 years, if I'm not wrong. 10 years, right? So after 5 years, I was admitted like 5 years ago. I'm coming back to KNH. They are unable to trace my files. So how can we manage all this? So lastly, what is M-Connect? after I've introduced all this, so what is M-Connect? So M-Connect, as you're looking here, M-Connect is a platform that is based on scalable. You're able to scalable and flexible IT solutions. And in Mindray, we have 3-tier solutions in terms of IT connectivity. Number one is bedside. Look at the patients in ICU or in the ward. There are so many medical devices surrounding this patient, right? Like in ICU, you have a ventilator, we have infusion pumps, we have defibrillators, we have ECG machines, we have all those medical equipments. And remember, when you have these medical equipments, they come up with paperwork. Each machine has got its paperwork. So how can we avoid all this? By integrating all those medical devices from the bedside and trying to have this one information projected to one screen where we are able to see all those information on one screen. And that's what I'm going to demonstrate today. So that is bedside device integration. And number two, departmental. For example, in ICU, not only you want to have a CMS, CMS stands for Central Monitoring Station. You want to have distributed monitoring. Doctors have their rooms where they want to rest. They can have a CPU, not only a computer or laptop, and they're able to see the patient's data or vital signs when they're in their room. And they're able to even send information to the caregivers in the ICU that, hey, there's a problem with this patient's vital signs, kindly check. Or for example, you're giving inotropic agents to your patients. And when you look at the vital signs, probably they're not well. You just type in and tell the caregiver that there's a problem here, kindly sort out this. And then lastly, third-party system. So we have a collaboration with other third-party system where we're able to integrate with them, call them Hospital Information System, EMR, and the rest of it. So what is this M-Connect? We're able to connect the patient from the bedside, the health provider, probably wherever he is, and then all these medical devices, and we're able to put them into these information systems. So going into my second objective about the ER, emergency room department, these are the challenges that we face every day. There are a lot of information that we have. Delayed recognition, that is triage, and uncertain deterioration of our patients when we receive them in casualty. We all agree. These are the challenges. And then number two is efficiency. Overcrowding in the ER department, especially in our public institutions, and then heavy workload. We all attest that there's no day in our hospital setup you'll have adequate staffs. So every time, inadequate staffs. So there's a lot of heavy workload. So this is one of the institutions we have here in Nairobi. Most of you know this hospital. Look at the way the nurse is trying to move with the oxygen with the patients. He's killing two birds with one stone, right? He's pulling the trolley with oxygen, and at the same time he's doing what? Pushing a patient with a trolley. And that trolley is mechanical trolley. It's really hard for them. Overcrowding again. So how can we solve this challenge that we have every day in our setups? So under Mindray platform, under pre-hospital transport system, we have our N1 transport patient monitor, especially pre-hospital, where, for example, in the ambulances, they can be remotely connected via the internet. And the receiving hospital, for example, let me use KNH. We have a patient who is being transported from Machakos. So as the patient is coming from Machakos, coming to KNH, the caregivers at casualty, the doctors, are able to see already the vital signs of the patient. So they know what kind of a patient they are receiving, so long as they are under one connectivity. And also they can even send reports to that hospital, that receiving hospital. For example, ECG, a patient with MI, they're able to send an ECG to a receiving hospital. Already we understand that time is muscle. The more you waste your time, the more you lose your patient, right? So sending this ECG to this receiving hospital, you're able to save a lot of time in terms of therapy to the patient and even save lives. So under that, again, under this platform, because of that, you're saving time and you're able to save life. So triage, you don't need, again, to input all the patient demographic on this vital signs monitor. You need a barcode scanner, as you can see. You just scan, and all the information goes to the AMR directly. You just scan, and you're able to get all this information. So it saves a lot of your time. So earlier I had alluded that you have a patient that you want to take to a CT scan. But again, the challenge is there's that gap of monitoring of this patient. You don't have that data. Like what the nurses do, because I've been in the practice, you find in the cardex or in the monitoring tool that they have, when the patient is taken, for example, to operational room or CT scan, they normally write patient in OR or patient in CT scan. So you wonder what is the problem here. There's this time that this patient was not monitored. If you find people who are enlightened and they want to look into these records, and you find probably it has been written the patient was in OR or the patient was in CT scan, there's no time for monitoring of this patient, they can even sue you. So having such a kind of a solution, N1 patient monitor, that can seamlessly transfer patient's vital signs to the host monitor. So you just pick from the SMR, you go, continuous monitoring, you don't need to put other connections, and then when you come back, you just plug in, and all the information is there. There's no point where you're losing your data of the patient. So OR solution, I'm almost finishing. These are the challenges that we have in our OR. Management of this patient is very difficult. Scattered equipment that you have with limited information, and these patients are high-risk patients. So again, the same concept. A patient arrives in preparation room, you've received a patient, you want to make sure that you counter-check that you're receiving a right patient. This is what we normally do. You normally ask for a file of the patient, you go through the file, as the handing over person is handing over the patient to you, you want to counter-check that this is the right patient that I want to operate on. You don't need to do all that. So having these solutions, just scan the patient's barcode, if you have these solutions in your OR, and the information reflects directly and you're able to find all that information of the patient. The same concept. Pick in induction room, you just play, just plug it in, and you have all this information, or patient information. So these are the devices that we have probably in our theaters. You have an anesthetic machine, you have a patient monitor. If you're doing advanced monitoring, you have a BIS module, bicepral index. You have an NMT, and these are many machines, infusion pumps. So you find with this, you're not able to get all this data. So how can you manage all this? This is how we do it in Mindray. So we have this module. Allow me just show it to you. So there's this module. It's called a Benelink module. With this module, you're able to integrate all bedside medical devices, whether you are in ICU or you are in theater. You're able to integrate all these medical devices, and you're able to see all that data into a patient monitor. So for the cameras, we can project it to the main screen so that you're able to see how you're able to integrate all this, so that you get all the information. Okay, so as you can see, this is an anesthetic machine, right? And then you have a special cable that you connect from the anesthetic machine. It's RJ45 cable. Just connect it from the anesthetic machine. And what you're doing to your patient here, all the data that is here, you're able to find it here on the patient monitor. So having this module, the Benelink module, the information from the anesthetic machine, you're able to integrate it and bring all that data into the patient monitor. And you're able to see it here. These are the details. These are the details from the anesthetic machine. If you want, these are ventilator, these are pump. If you have infusion pumps, you can have a look at the infusion pump that we connected. Anesthetic machine, you can have all this look. And also you can, if you want to look at the loops, respiratory loops, spirometry, from the ventilator of the anesthetic machine, you can look at this, all of it. Like you can go to the respiratory loops, and you're able to find all this information here. All of it. These are the respiratory loops from the anesthetic ventilator, all this. So, thank you, James. So having introduced that, so you have your Benelink here. So you have different medical devices at the bedside. You have infusion pumps. Thank you, Mustafa. So you have a Benelink, you have infusion pumps, you have an anesthetic machine, all those medical devices. You connect them using the Benelink into the patient monitor, and you're able to find all that data in one machine, that you just look at that one machine, and you find all the detail that you want on these. So the same thing. And then another very important thing that we want to introduce here is about iView. This is a platform. For example, you connect with a third-party system. Like the radiological department. You are in theater. A patient is on the table. Before you do any procedure with this patient, probably you want to do surgery for this patient. You want to confirm what was the X-ray before. You normally ask, where's the film? You want to look at the film, right? You don't need to do that. So long as you have this software, the iView module is a module that is used with our high-end patient monitors. So once you have this integrated in the patient monitor, you're able to see the X-ray on the patient monitor. You don't need to have a film, a real film, and you're able to see that. So lastly, ICU solutions. These are the challenges that we have. A lot of alarms, medication errors, heavy workload, and complex workflow. So under ICU, it's the same concept again. We have so many medical equipments. With the use of the Benelink that we have, you're able to integrate all this information of the patient's bedside medical devices into a patient monitor, and you're able to see this. And then also, you're able to have reliable basis to diagnose your patient if, for example, you're giving infusions, especially nootropic agents, to your patient. So long as you've integrated the patient monitor, where's the infusion pumps? You have the infusion pumps, you connect them to the patient monitor, you're able to see all that data on a patient monitor at a glance. Again, I had said that a doctor is in his room and he sees there's something wrong with a patient in the ICU. And he wants to give a prescription. You don't need to struggle, call for people. Just order the prescription on this platform. It's a closed loop infusion management, and you're able to manage your patient effectively here. And then distributed monitoring. Apart from the central station, you can have different devices connected to this. You can monitor your patient using a mobile device. Yes, a mobile device. Like you can see here, this is probably a nurse or a doctor looking at the patient's vital signs using a mobile. You just download the software, and you're connected to that server, and you're able to see what is happening to your patient. So you can access data anywhere, everywhere, and anytime. You can have silent ICU, the same concept. Silent ICU, Benelink, you're outside the isolation rooms, you have all this data. And then you're transporting your patient from ICU to CT scan. There's no point you're losing data. Seamless transportation. To the third-party system. From the bedside to the second level of monitoring, and lastly the third-party system. You're able to get all this information. So I had already introduced this. So the question is this: can these health information systems that we have and IT help in improving our patients' care? That's our question. And it's a question that we'll answer by ourselves. So can all these IT solutions help to improve our patients' care? And then what does the future hold in terms of information technology? Dr. Lee had introduced about emerging trends. So what does the future hold? Who knew that we are able to manage our patients via Zoom? We are able to hold meetings via Zoom. Who knew? But nowadays we are able to do that. Who knew that we are able to do teleconferencing? and telemedicine. So, like you can see here, this is an isolation room in ICU, and the caregiver is able to see the patient's information from the radiological department without physically going there or going to pick the films. So he's able to see this. And then here we have workstations. We're able to reduce the infection risk to ourselves. And this is a doctor in the working office, and they're able to see this. And lastly, mobile. They're able to see the patient's data via the mobile viewer. And then telemedicine and teaching. With this connectivity, we are able to see probably experts. These are some of the images which were taken during this pandemic in Wuhan. We all know what is Wuhan. And we see they were able to do comprehensive consultation with consultants wherever they were, and they were able to manage their patients well. And these are the images for telemedicine that they're able to do. So this is where we are heading to. So that is the end of my presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Rogers, for taking us through that aspect of data acquisition, integration, and even retrieval, basically data management in healthcare, and highly appreciated. We are coming to the tail end of this as we come to a close. We are going to have our Q&A in a short while, and I'm going to ask Jotham and his team to make arrangements for that. For those of us who are physically in the room, you should be able to ask your questions directly. Those joining us online, you can send in your questions through the platforms that you've been engaging us on, and we'll be able to present this to our panelists. So I'm going to ask the panelists to come up front. I'm going to request Drs. Idris Chikove, Dr. Lee Ngugi, Dr. Suzanne Nabulindo, and Mr. Mustafa Albarudi. Kindly come up front, and we'll take the questions from the audience. And I think Rogers and Ireri will coordinate if there are any questions coming in online that we will be able to handle as well. Karibuni. I now open the floor for questions from within. If you have a question, you can just put up your hand. I don't know if you have an extra mic that we could use. Yeah, I can pass a mic to you. So the floor is open for questions or even comments.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Lawrence Kimolo. I work for Aga Khan Hospital. My question is going to the society, Dr. Stephen Okello. I just wanted to know what the society is doing about sensitizing the practitioners on the use of nitrous oxide and the anesthetic agents. Now that they have been identified as one of the greenhouse gases. And that comes because of the fact that in our institution, we started the initiative a year ago. I'm not sure whether it is happening in the public sector. And it's an area that requires the leadership from the Society of Anesthesiologists to look into how we can bring down the use of nitrous oxide and the other agents. The other question is about the equipment design, Mustafa and I think Rogers. Do we have an equipment especially the anesthetic machines, which is which is able to work without using nitrous oxide and make use of other gases like as a driving gas like the medical air or oxygen. And the last one is about the anesthetic gas scavenging system. How does it work with the current anesthetic machines that we have? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question. Mr. Mustafa, I don't know if you want to take your question first.
Yes, regarding to the first question of having different type of networking for the pipelines. Yes, we have the ability to make the configuration according to the hospital requirement. We have the ability to connect the air, oxygen, or nitrous oxide. If you want to make it like only oxygen and medical air, it's available. For example, in Egypt, we have a prevention of using the nitrous oxide. We are not using nitrous oxide in our hospitals. So we can bring the machine from the manufacturing, the beginning of the manufacturing, only with oxygen and air. So you can also choose which is the driving gas you need to use. Is it air or is it oxygen? And even if anything happens for either one of them, automatically the machine can transfer to the other driving gas. So if you have a problem with the oxygenation, so automatically with the oxygen, the automatically device will change to the air as a drive gas. And also regarding the second question for the scavenging system, we have two types of a scavenging system, either the passive or the active. The passive is a common way of removing the waste through the wall or through a window from like a pipe from the machine, or using the active scavenging system, and this requires from the hospital to have some special preparation for the vacuum from the pipelines and of the gas network. So if we have this preparation ready from the hospital infrastructure, we can use the active scavenging systems that will be combined to the anesthesia machine as a reservoir, and then it's vacuumed through the gas network. Hope this answer your question.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mustafa. Now to the first question, I'm going to ask Dr. Susanna Bulindo. She's the Secretary of the Kenya Society of Anesthesiologists, and she's going to take on the question about what the society is doing. Definitely, this is an important thing, and it's a continuum. We have many stakeholders in controlling this pollution, right from the manufacturers, the distributors, the procurement, the users, and everyone. So she's going to, in summary, address your question on that.
Dr. Okello, and thank you for your question. I will start by saying that this is a question that is personally very important to me, and we have been asking questions about, do we really still need to be using nitrous oxide? Because we are one of the biggest consumers as anesthesia practitioners of nitrous oxide in this country. So the use of nitrous oxide in the country is basically a historical practice that most of us have come and found it here. If you look at most of the hospitals, historically, you'll find the anesthetic machines will have an option of oxygen and nitrous oxide without an option of air. But we are seeing again, as we have increased the number of anesthesia practitioners all over the country, people are going and they're asking, being involved in procurement and asking for anesthetic machines that has an option of air. The other challenge has been the availability of medical air in the operating theaters, which again is something people are asking for to be availed in the many theaters. So you'll find anesthetic machines with an option of air, but we don't have air. So one, from the society's point of view, it is something, as you have said, we need to champion because we are mandated with the guiding practice of anesthesia in the country. So one way is we are through our CMEs, we are going to organize and talk about the pros and cons of using nitrous oxide and start sensitizing people on where we need to find nitrous oxide being used in most of the theaters. Secondly is advocacy among administrators, managers, procurement departments concerning the importance of starting to downgrade the use of nitrous in the operating theaters and anywhere else it's being used. First, for the benefits of the patient. Secondly, for the environmental benefits that not using nitrous comes with. So it's a challenge to us as a society. The discussions have been going on among the groups. A lot of people asking, do we still need to use this? And we are going to pick that up and start talking about it on a bigger scale. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nabulindo, for your comment. Next, I'm going to invite Dr. Opere. Dr. Opere is a very senior anesthesiologist in this country, and I think he's taught all of us, the anesthetists and anesthesiologists who are in this room. I'm going to ask him to comment or ask a question that he has. Karibu, Daktari.
Thank you very much. I think you can hear me. Oh, the people online. Now, actually, my comment is based on what he has asked about nitrous oxide and air. And right now, actually, there is room for improvement when we have the COVID going on, and most of the counties are buying oxygen plants. You know, these things go together, the oxygen plant and the air plant, because they are different. Because I saw actually in Nairobi also they are doing it, and we're doing the tender, so they're supposed to bring the two together. So it's during this time actually that the campaign should be intensified so that when the counties are doing the oxygen plants, you make sure that they also include the air. Because if this one goes on without the other, it will be very difficult for them to start asking for the air plant again, the medical air again, because they are not going to be the same. They are not the same. What is going to produce the oxygen is different from where you are going to be. The air actually will go with the vacuum. Most of those people from the biomedical will tell you that when they are doing the vacuum, they will come with the medical air, not with the oxygen. So it's at this time that actually we need to do a lot of campaign to make sure that we get the medical air included. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Opere. Any other questions, comments from the audience in the house? Do we have any questions coming in from our online audience? Okay.
Afternoon. I'm Elisha Wanderi from Crown Healthcare. Now, there's something I wanted also to make clear about what Rogers had presented on, is about the connectivity. Now, the connectivity is also open to different platforms, because it may think you've already set up a theater, you've already set up an ICU, and then whatever you're bringing on board is only particular to this as a brand. No, it's not. So it's also open to other platforms. It's an IT solution. So whatsoever platform you are in, you can also engage. You can also engage us. We can also enlighten on how we are able to achieve the various platforms of seamless connectivity in different areas that you may be interested in. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that comment. Any other question? Yes, Alicia.
Thank you very much for presenting
My name is Elisha Kirwa from Not the cost of that A9 machine.
Very important question from Elisha. I don't know who is going to take this one.
Hi, sorry, it's not Elisha asking questions and Elisha answering, just that happens. Now, the costing might not be particular because being a modular platform, it depends on, there's what, I think from the presentation you might have realized, there's what is standard for the machine, there's what is optional. So based on what configuration you want to get to is what will determine the final pricing. But there's obviously like a range. You're talking about can be even as low as around 5 million or even as high as you want to take it. But it's not a fixed figure. It depends on what configuration you want to go with in terms of solutions in terms of softwares that you want on board, or for example, an inclusion of the HFNC platform, whatsoever. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I can see he's avoiding to answer your question.
Yeah, thank you very much for that wonderful presentation. My name is Dr. Mwithia from the Kenya Defense Forces. I just want to add on from what has just been asked about the costing. And before I ask that, I just want to know this new model, and this question goes to the MinRay team, the A9, what particular advantage does it come with compared to the A7 anesthesia machine? And number two, the M-Connect platform, if you have to add that, what would be the cost differential?
I think, Rogers, you should be able to handle that. You didn't get the question. Okay, maybe Dr. Mwithia can paraphrase it.
No, the first part of the question is basically the new additions of the A9 over and above the A7 model of the anesthesia machine, what it comes with. And number two, the cost of the M-Connect facility if you are to add it onto this machine.
Thank you, Dr. Mwithia. I'll respond to the new features in the A9. Okay, I'll start with the HFNC, high flow oxygen therapy for this machine. There's no other anesthetic machine in the world with this feature of HFNC in anesthetic market. We are the only patent, this is the only patent technology with MindRay that we're able to offer high flow oxygen therapy, first time in an anesthetic machine. And we've seen all the advantages of having HFNC in an anesthetic machine. Number two is about having an electronic vaporizer. The S7 as a mechanical vaporizer, while this N9 anesthetic machine has an electronic vaporizer. And then having an electronic vaporizer, it comes with an automated control of anesthesia, we call it SCA. And this is one of the very good features in this machine where you don't need to do anything for the machine. The machine does everything for your patient. So long as the first thing that you need to do is input all the patient's demographics, the most important, the age, type of the patient, you're doing your patient, and category of the patient. And the anesthetic machine is able to do everything for you. The SCA, automated control of anesthesia. And then we are used to having only 2 modes for our anesthetic machine in terms of ventilation. But this is, actually this is a full grade ICU a ventilator. It has all full grade ICU ventilation modes. And one of the very good modes that I want to talk about today again is about AMV, adaptive ventilation mode. The only thing that you need to do to set for this are only 3 variables. The minute ventilation, the FI2 that you want to give to your patient, and any other thing, the anesthetic machine is able to do everything for you. And so many other features around. Lung recruitment features, sustained inflation, multi-step inflation. You're able to do NMT, neuromuscular transmission. You're able to do Bs. biceptal index monitoring of your patient, and all that, even calculating the mark values of your patient. So thank you. So for the cost, I'll leave it to Thomas, who will respond to that. Please, Thomas, come. Okay.
Top of this, we wanted to use just a very little of the inhalation anesthetic agent. How are you going to do that?
Okay, under automated control of anesthesia, number 1, it works with automated ventilation, not on manual. That's one point. Number 2, we must input all the patient's demographic, including age, as I alluded earlier, age of the patient, what is the weight of the patient, and everything of the patient. And then the next thing, you must choose which mode. Of course, it will be controlled modes, either PCV or VCV that you prefer to your patient. And then under control of anesthesia, you will choose which anesthetic agent you want to use, if it is either Sevo or Halo or anything that you want to use there, and it's able to do everything for your patient. I hope I've answered your question.
Well, what I was asking is, you see, many times we use inhalation anesthetic agent, but you also balance it. You want to bring in opioids, or you want to use remifentanil together so that you don't use much of either. Now, in this particular case, it means that it's going to be almost impossible. Because once you put it on control, it means it's going to give you what the patient requires. So if, for example, it's a weak patient, you wanted to use less of inhalation anesthetic agent and less of the opioids, how are you going to balance it? It means that will not be possible. Lee, maybe you want to.
Okay, responding to that question is, it is always good to see what is HCA on the machine, but the most important is that it gives you the target of the gasset that you want to give. It gives you a window that you want to choose on which target of the gasset that you want to use to your patient. Right? If you find time, I'll show what is HCA there.
Thank you very much. I'm going to ask Dr. Lee to comment, and then Dr. Idris, you also had your hand up at some point to make a comment, and then after that, James is going to have a comment on nitrous oxide as well. Thank you. Karibu Lee.
Thank you, Dr. Opere, for that question. So generally, not specifically talking about this machine, but just how automatic modes work, is that you set the target for the patient. So for example, if you have a very frail patient, then the end tidal setting will be a lower setting. You'll set for yourself. It's you to set the target. You set the target of your end tidal agent, and you also set the target of the FiO2. So the machine will adjust based on the target you have set. So if you have used opioids, use less.
Yeah, and it's also very important when you mention something like intelligent or automatic, it may easily be misconstrued into people believing that you don't need to do anything, or you don't need to know anything. You just have the machine and it solves all your problems. I think the targets, like it's been said, has to be set. Now, my question goes to Mindre again. You have very beautiful machines. You have machines that have a lot of utility, but in as much as you do these educational programs, we don't see an increment in the utilization of all the tools. So sometimes I believe we need to go yonder this regular kind of teachings into, sort of creating some form of competitions. Like, I would suggest that you need to start sponsoring young practitioners or even senior practitioners who have the time to try and utilize some of these tools, like the data, the databases, and even demonstrate how useful they are. Because, this is theoretical. We don't actually do the measurements. We don't even see how true what you said is. So if you start programs where we can have people competing, to just show how effective it is in how well we are saving the, globe from greenhouse effect. I think you need to start going there. If I use your machine to, collect all that data and do the bedside decision support tool to just increase the safety, we need to start sponsoring those things so that students can even do projects, because we say there's so much that can be done, yet it is not being done. So I think sometimes instead of like doing these good meetings like in such a setup, some money could actually be set aside into motivating junior or younger or people who have the zeal to come up with projects that will demonstrate that these machines actually do make a difference. That is my request, rather than just having it on paper every day, on pamphlets, stuck on walls. We're not really seeing it on the ground. That is my request.
Thank you very much, Idris. I'm going to ask James to comment on nitrous oxide. And also maybe taking up on your challenge, maybe the team will be able to advise, although I agree with you that a lot of their machines, the hardware is there and it's really good, but the challenge is usually with the software, the options that they give. So you might find you have all this hardware, but the capacity is a bit limited. James, as you talk about nitrous oxide, I've noticed that your iView module is completely wired. In this age and time, why weren't you guys considering a wireless communication? And they're just next to each other.
My name is James. My entry is yes. Now I have 3 questions, right? Yeah. First, I'll start with Lawrence, asking about nitrous, air, and oxygen. For me, as an engineer, I recommend during the procurement, you look at all the 3 options, because you may order a machine with only 2 options, maybe nitrous and oxygen, and then you lack nitrous in the hospital. So if you get a machine that has all the 3 options, you can either use the balancing gas being air or nitrous. And then another issue was about anesthesia gases. We have AG modules which can calculate for you about if the patient is receiving enough anesthetic gases or not, or if you are wasting. Another thing I may put across, you need AGSS, scavenging systems in your theaters. I would like also when you're procuring for maybe oxygen plants and air, please include AGSS systems in your hospitals. Many theaters don't have AGSS, which is not a good thing in Kenya. For the wireless, we have wireless option for connectivity, but for the connection on using Benelink, the machines are close to each other, so there's no need of using wireless. And also, the Benelink can also connect to even other machines, GE, Philips. We integrate them. So you don't have to look like you need to have a solution for only manned equipment. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, Dr. Nabulendo, you have a comment, and then after that, Dr. Mwithia.
Okay, thank you very much. Mine is a question again to Mindre. From the leadership of the society, one of our greatest challenge in the practice of anesthesia in this country has been our numbers. The demand of critical care services and anesthesia services is growing very fast in the country. Our numbers still remain quite limited. And one of the things that has been our desire is that we would like to reach the farthest of areas in the country. Again, most practitioners are concentrated in the city. So can your M-Connect system be used for telemedicine in the anesthesia setup, so that if I am in Nairobi and I'm the specialist here, and somebody in Garissa, can I take them through a difficult patient, like we see with what the radiologists are doing now? And is it a place we can partner as KSA and Critical Care Society of Kenya to try as fast as possible to get to the rest of the country, because our numbers will grow, but they will grow a bit slower, than the IT platforms. Thank you.
Nabulindo. Mustafa, would you want to take that? Or
regarding the M-Connect, as Rogers was presenting to us these features, I believe so that you can make this experience between different type of different hospitals. You may have the connectivity. You can connect two hospitals together, and you can transfer your experience through our M-Connect, especially that we are able to connect with a lot of server suppliers. We can also provide the list of the companies that we are able to connect with through the hospital information system level. I think this is a bit universal connection between different hospitals. So if we have this level of information, hospital information system, so we can connect, and through this we can provide this cooperation between hospitals. Hope this answers your question.
Thank you, and we are going to have an additional comment from Rogers on the same.
So regarding the connectivity, for example, a patient like in Garissa, and you're in Nairobi and you want to consult. In Kenya, we agree that we have issues with connectivity in terms of internet. There are areas where we have issues with internet. So with M-Connect thing, number one, you must have a server that is able to connect you, all these medical devices to connect you from Garissa. Same interface. That's the first thing, same interface. So the challenge that we have is, can we achieve that in our current situation that we have in Kenya? So it is a challenge for us. So yes, there's a possibility we can do remote consultation. That is remote consultation from different locations, having different consultants consulting each other and giving directions in terms of management of the patient. It's able. But now the main challenge that we have in our country, we understand, is connectivity with these areas. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Rogers. But I think that from what I got, what Susan is saying is, it's good you identified the challenges, and the proposal here is there a way that the professional societies, the Critical Care Society of Kenya and the KSA, can work with MINRE to overcome some of these challenges, including things like setting up this common server that you can use. And I think this is a discussion that we can take from here, because we do believe it can make a difference in the outcome of our patients, and that will be an important contribution for MINRE and our societies towards safety in our patients. Now, Dr. Mwidhi had a question on the cost of this M-Connect system, which hasn't been addressed. I think, TK? Thomas, this bay out a
I've been trying to run away from this question. So Dr. Keller has already realized. So what I'll request is, after the meeting, I'll give you my cards. They're right outside here. We're going to configure that for you, because each configuration will have its own pricing. And Dr. Mwidhi doesn't want to hear that. Don't worry, I'll give you that pricing. Please allow me to do that with your permission. Yeah? And the same applies to the Air9, the main unit. Thank you.
I think we'll probably allow one or two more comments, and then we can have the final comments. And
good afternoon to you all. My name is David Arunda, an aesthetic assistant from Nairobi Hospital. My concern goes to the MINRE. We appreciate what you do, and I was just concerned with all that is being talked about. It is more to do with the anesthetists. In theaters, there are the anesthetic assistants, there are the biomeds. What initiative do you have to also take the other team through your machines for troubleshooting? Because they're always the first people to arrive before the anesthetists. Thank you.
The MINRE team, I don't know who will take that question. James.
I didn't get the question clearly.
I think to summarize, is an anesthetic assistant, and there are some of the people who come to contact with the machine first. Do you have plans to take them through this machine as well?
Yeah, for the end users trainings, before any installations, we plan with our distributors for the trainings. But for today, we'll have a hands-on with our specialist, so don't worry. Okay. Yeah, we are coming up with the Mindre office and a training center, which will have these demos for the end users.
Okay, also there's a point that Dr. Idris raised, and I think no one has answered that question, about developing the upcoming registrars and doctors, young doctors who are vibrant. Actually, there's something cooking. Let me preempt it. There's something cooking up. We want to cooperate with one of the institutions and come up with a very good simulation lab and a training center that we're able to, all these machines, all these difficult topics that we have and different workshops, we're going to ensure that we help our caregivers to our patients are well equipped with this knowledge. So that's what we are planning. So when everything is set up, we're going to respond to that. So that's what I can respond to. Back to you, Dr. Keller.
Thank you very much, and we are happy to hear that there is something cooking. We are waiting to partake of the meal. Dr. Lee Ngugi, I think we are coming to the end of this. We've not had any questions coming from online. So I'm going to, first of all, have a few parting comments from our panelists before we move to the next phase. So I'll start with Dr. Lee.
Maybe just to give thanks to KSA, Mindre, and all the attendees for this. My parting comments would be, I think it's a high time we aspired to a high standard of healthcare in Kenya. Our constitution demands us to give a high standard of care. And as we sit here, as we go back wherever we are, maybe just to always keep that at the back of our mind, asking ourselves, when we are handling our patients, are we using the best? Are we using the best techniques? Or even where we are not, we are constantly thinking of how to improve. That would be my take home.
So thank you very much for today's meeting. I think it's been useful to many of us. I just would like to urge the clinical practitioners to be very active in decision making. So if you're called upon to participate, like in choosing the best machine for your operating room or ICU, I think you should try as much as possible to make it a priority, so that, again, if you're to make an impact, you need to control what comes into your hospital. Because a lot of us are maybe busy with other things, and then much later on complain that we don't have this or the other. So I think it's high time for practitioners to also take control of their practice by being involved in this important aspect of, like, let's say, procurement, because it's the only way we can change our practice. Thank you very much.
Good. Thank you very much. And what I would like to say is to encourage the end users who are practitioners to embrace technology. Initially, when technology started coming into healthcare, we all thought that we shall be jobless because the machines will do everything, but evidence is coming up, and as people continue using more automated and intelligent machines, clinicians are actually finding that they have time to actually take care of the patient and use your knowledge now to take care of the patient with the machine helping you. So we are happy that MINRE is actually leading in technology in healthcare and critical care and anesthesia in particular. And we encourage the practitioners to embrace this and continue using what is available to them. Thank you.
For my comment, I would like to thank you all for having me today and having me in Kenya especially. Thank you very much. And I would like to emphasize that I'm spending now 3 years in MINDRE. Actually, during these 3 years, there is a very fast and rapid change in technologies for the healthcare are having or done in this time. And I saw a lot of updates and technologies, innovations done by MINDRE in this past period. I believe that this generation of the people on Earth now is very lucky. And I don't know if we didn't have the technology regarding this healthcare and medical equipments for such a pandemic period that happened this time, what will gonna be our situation now? So I think it was sad for some of us to losing some beloved ones from this COVID-19, but fortunately to have all of this technology provided and all the qualified caregivers that we're having now, I think we are lucky. Hope that this time we may provide you some assistance and support that could help you to bring more healthcare to your patients. And thank you again for having me today. Thank you.
Thank you very much to our panelists for a job well done and to all the participants. I cannot say much more, but I want to reiterate what I think all of them have said in terms of let us get involved in what we do. If we are going to procure machines, whatever equipment, drugs, as we are the users at the end of the day, can we find a way of getting ourselves involved in generating the specifications that we need? We should be able to evaluate them technically. We should be able to give feedback honestly to the suppliers, distributors, manufacturers, or whoever it is, because that is the only way we're going to improve. We all know that over the last year or so, there have been some buzzwords across the country and indeed the world. Anesthesiologists have suddenly been recognized, and more so the critical care practitioners. Everyone is talking about ICUs, but not many people know what goes on in there except those of you who are in here or listening to this symposium. So when we go back wherever we are, let us take leadership in determining that what we are going to use. Let us not sit behind the table or behind the machine, and once they get as something, and then we start complaining. So let us change this. Before we leave, or before I invite Mr. Thomas Gitonga for the vote of thanks, I'd like to recognize the presence of all of you who are here. And being among the seniors is a really humbling experience to all of us. And in this regard, I'm going to ask one of the senior most in the room. This is someone who has gone through most of the machines that, or equipment that Dr. Ngugi projected to us. He has seen the development of anesthesia over the decades up to now, and I'm sure he has a good idea where they'd like us to go into the future. I'm going to ask Dr. Hezra Opere. Dr. Opere, kindly come forward and just give us your parting shot and a few words of encouragement for this audience. Daktari, karibu.
Thank you very much, Steve. Now, to the audience that is here, what Dr. said actually is the real truth. Because many times, actually, we want to purchase certain items, but we fail to say exactly what we want. Because if you do not, in procurement, actually, let me now tell you what it means in procurement. If you want to procure an item, you must state exactly what that machine you want is going to do for you. You must state exactly what it is. Do not go and copy what has been printed on a machine and put it there as what you want. Because if you do that in procurement, you say you are like doing what you call single sourcing, because you are going to eliminate most of the others. And to those who work in public hospitals, that actually may be challenged and it can be stopped. So that basically will delay your procurement process. If you want this kind of machine, state exactly what you want that machine to do for you, and state the qualities that you want. But do not mention some of the qualities that these people have mentioned exactly word by word. Because if you do it that way, the other competitors will go and appeal, and your procurement process will be halted. What we need as a society, as they have said, is that we need to work together. It's actually the togetherness that will make us get what we want. And right now we have a window, because everybody knows that oxygen is needed because of the COVID-19, just like I was mentioning. So when those who are outside are asking the county government to procure oxygen plant, as Dr. had kindly stated, or stated that at the moment we need more of the medical air than the nitrous oxide, please let them also ask for procurement of the medical air plant so that these two can be purchased together, because basically you will need them together. He will tell you it's a biomed from Nairobi Hospital. Most of the time, actually, whatever we have is not enough, because every day in the morning, if you can, the pressure for the medical air is always low, because actually at the moment we have one. And they're supposed to procure another medical air and oxygen plant, so that is enough. So please, as people who are in the medical practice, we need to work together. This work is not left alone to the officials. All of us need to work together, move together. If you are given an activity to do, please do it. Because from my experience, what I have learned is that we talk. But when you are given the responsibility to do, there are very few people who are willing to do it. There are others who will accept to do it, but they will not go ahead and implement it. So this is what we need to do, so that we move together with the society. The society does not belong to the officials. The society belongs to all of us. Together we participate, because the patients that we handle are our relatives. They are us. Because if you do not train well, the next time I'm traveling in Bungoma, I'll have an accident in Bungoma and I will have to be attended to in Bungoma. It will not matter that I live in Nairobi. No. What is important is what will be done to me at the initial stage. So that's why whenever we're doing these things, it's irrespective of where this is going to be, we should all the time make sure we fight for these health services to improve in the counties even more than outside here, because majority of our people are there. And this we can only achieve if we work together as a team. That's the only thing I can appeal to, that we work together, because if we put our voices together, they will be heard. If he's crying alone, nobody will listen to him. But if all of us are working together as a team, that's the only thing I would want us to take home, because we have moved from where we were using actually the boils machine, which had only one vaporizer on it, and if it's spoiled, you have nothing to use. So we have come from far, and we need to continue improving step by step every day. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Opere. I am going to request the panelists, you can take your seats. Where I come from, once an old man has spoken, I am not allowed to comment further on what he has talked about. You know where that is, and therefore that marks the end of that comment. I'm now going to call Mr. Thomas Kitonga to come up front and give a vote of thanks and some final words before I think he'll invite us for something else after this. Thank you very much for your cooperation. Wish you all the best. Remember safe anesthesia, remember critical care, remember pain management. It's on our doorstep. Let's go out there, do it the best way we can, because the next patient is always you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Okello. I must appreciate everyone in the room before I narrow down to the specific individuals. Really, we're excited as Crown and Mindray because out of the invited, we had about 95% turn up, which is quite good. Please give yourself a clap. I want to thank the team that made this possible. We had our colleagues in Mindray and Crown that worked the whole night. I mean, until morning. For some reasons, we are not purposed to stream live at this event. But then, as that yesterday morning, we kept getting requests for streaming live, and we had to make the very final decision to do that, and that meant working very hard and very quickly to put all the equipment together. Thank you so much, Jotham. Thank you so much, Engineer Kiroi. Thank you so much, Rangers, team, Susan, everyone, Simon. These guys stayed here until, I think, close to midnight. As late as 2 a.m., I think some of these two guys that I'm mentioning, Rogers and Jotham, were still driving around looking for some oxygen cylinders, just to make sure that you don't keep on having alarms on the machine from here. So that was just awesome. I'll go back to Dr. Okello again. You didn't just do us good by moderating the event, but by making sure that we stick to that time. I mean, that was fantastic. In fact, we finished slightly earlier than we had anticipated. Let's give this good doctor a nice clap. Yeah. Thank you so much, panelists. Dr. Chikope, it has been awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Namlindo. Thank you so much, Dr. Ligugi. Thank you, Mustafa. That was an engaging Q&A session, which was quite good. One thing that you're going to realize is we don't just invite people like yourselves to come and showcase what we're doing as Crown and Mindray, but come and hear what you guys expect from us. Now, that's what is called partnership. When we come, sit down, and during the Q&A session, we get to hear what you guys would wish to see in terms of features and some of those equipment. That is an encouragement to us. And that will make us speak or reach out to our R&D departments in China and other places to try and make these features better. We've had teams that have been working from the background. From the Mindray side, they are not here with us. They've not even made a single phone call or sent an email, but we know they are watching or they've watched this event. The likes of Diego and Essien and the rest of your colleagues, we sincerely appreciate. The Crown of Care team, we have teams that are in the office. They didn't even show up here, but they've done a fantastic job. We sincerely appreciate. So we appreciate each one of you, and we sincerely want to say thank you so much. Promat guys, you're just fantastic. These guys sit at the back. We call them the technical bench enough times. I called Eric, I think yesterday, at around 3 p.m. telling that we need to stream live, and they didn't complain. Thank you so much for everything. I must say that I'm not putting a disclaimer, but I must say that how we arrived at you and not them. When I say you and not them, I'm not trying to borrow from some political statement, but when I say you and not them, I mean you that you got an invitation and them that did not get invitation. We didn't do that to mean that we have lesser doctors. We did that because of COVID protocols, and we all know that. And we've had to do that just to make sure that we are safe and that they are also safe. And the way we did it was, we did that for Nairobi. We did it in a manner that represents different hospitals. And for those that came from other counties, we did that again just to ensure a bit of a geographical balance. So please, those that didn't get the invitation, please forgive us. We have no ill intentions at all. We mean well for everyone. And we value everyone. And this I wanted to make very clear so that tomorrow we don't meet a certain doctor and start complaining that we didn't send an invitation. Having said that, what I'll say is, again, about pricing, please feel free, reach out after this. Let's talk about it. And we're going to do the best that we can. We have lunch for everyone. So on your way out, you're going to get a meal voucher from Susan. Susan, please wave. Get a meal voucher on your way out. We're going to have our lunch by the pool side, just across on the other side. And feel free after your lunch. This machine will stay here for some time. Come back here. You'll come across Mustafa and Ronjas and Jotham. They're going to help you by answering a bit of your questions. And let's keep engaging. Let's stay safe. Let's keep on devising our people, the non-medics, to try and help the country manage COVID-19 better in our good country. Thank you so much again. God bless you all.